Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was sealed in Pokemon. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Dregus, link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Konoha, late at night. It was late at night and several ninja were abuzz with what had happened a few hours ago. The stealing and just now retrieval of the forbidden scroll of seals. It was stolen because one Naruto Uzumaki had failed his genin exam and had been tricked by Mizuki into stealing it, thinking it was a makeup exam to pass. Several hours had passed, giving Naruto enough time to actually learn a jutsu from the scroll. And not only that, he had managed to surprise and defeat the traitor Mizuki when he had revealed his plans using the shadow clone jutsu. He also managed to graduate thanks to his other teacher Iruka. Now someone would think that someone like Naruto would be absolutely ecstatic about not just passing his exam after the last few failures, but also learning a high-level jutsu and aiding in the capture of a traitor. You would be wrong. If one were to look at Naruto, they would not find him with his large smile and eyes bright with happiness. Oh no. Even though his face was down, making hard to see his face, if one were to look they would see a disturbing blank look on his face. The only way to tell what he was feeling was to look into his eyes, which had lost some of their brightness, to be replaced with a broken and haunted look. Why, you ask? Well, it was because he was a Jinchuriki, a literal human sacrifice. He had heard the term before from the villagers spoken in whispers, but he did not fully understand what it had meant until today, that is. Mizuki had revealed that little secret, kept so because of a law the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, had made preventing people from speaking of it, though it did little to actually stop them from doing so. But the secret of what him being a Jinchuriki meant that he was actually the living prison for a massive creature known as a Bijuu. And not just any Bijuu, the one that had attacked 15 years ago, the very day he was born, the nine-tailed fox, Kyuubi. And when Naruto heard this, everything finally made sense to him. When he was younger, there were times when the villagers would group up and would attack him, only to be stopped by ninja. Only now did he realize they were not protecting him from them, they were protecting the villagers from him. After all, they probably didn't want me to access the power of the demon by accident and go on a rampage. Naruto thought bitterly. And the old ma no, the Sandaime didn't spend time me, some random orphan out of the goodness of his heart, oh no. He probably did it to keep a check on his precious Jinchuriki. He thought with a sneer. It made sense. The Hokage was a busy man, and what other reason would he have for spending time with someone like him when he had a village to run? It did not take him long to reach the lake within one of the training grounds in order to try and clear his head. He had asked Iruka if there was somewhere he could go to think. This of course worried Iruka after everything that had happened, but Naruto said that there was nothing to worry about, putting on his mask of foolish happiness, which served to fool Iruka. Walking up the still water, he then looks at his reflection. He takes notice that he resembles a picture of a man he had seen in the Hokage's office hanging on the wall. He had the same eyes and hair and briefly wonders if he was somehow perhaps related to him. But then his eyes narrow on his whisker marks. The very same marks, marking him as Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. He couldn't believe that the Hokage would not tell him something like this. Well, he supposed that his mask of idiocy and happiness would have dissuaded the Hokage from telling him, but damn it. You just don't hide something like this from someone. Wait, if the Hokage was lying to me about why the villagers didn't like me, what else was he lying to me about? Thought Naruto, the realization of the Hokage's betrayal stinging deeply. Damn it all. He yells out into the night, no longer able to hold in his emotions. Damn those worthless bastards. I'm not the fox. The hell can't they see that? I didn't ask for this. I never wanted this. Damn villagers too stupid to see me and not the fox. Damn bastard Hokage, pretending to be kind to me when he just wants to make sure the village's weapon doesn't go berserk. Letting out another yell, he falls to his knees and begins punching the ground in frustration, anger, bitterness and loneliness coming up, no longer being able to repress them any longer. Had he looked in his reflection on the water's surface in front of him, he would have noticed his eyes shifting between blue and red with a slit pupil, and his features turned more beastly the more his emotions spiraled out of control. X. Inside of the seal. For little over 12 years, the nine-tailed fox Kyuubi had been stuck inside of the seal. Only waking a few times, having been woken up when sensing her host's extreme despair several years ago. At the time, the fox couldn't believe that a child could hold such sadness and anger. Though the Uzumaki were rather emotional people, as they were ones that did put family above all else, unlike most of the shinobi world. Didn't these fools know how dangerous an Uzumaki was when they were angry? How else would her previous host, the boy's mother Kushina, have gained such a title as Red Death? You didn't get it for being nice, that's for damn sure. But for as much as she, the Kyuubi hated and having her pride as the strongest Bijuu to be sealed, she could not fault Naruto. The boy did not ask to be her Jinchuriki. Unlike most, which would have jumped at the chance to have such power, he did not even want it. And she couldn't blame him. One time she had been watching through Naruto's eyes when he was at the library, having snuck in as the librarian did not allow him entrance. She was surprised at what he was reading, and it made her blood boil. It was about Hashirama and his many deeds, but Naruto was at the part where he attempted peace with the other nations by giving her brethren away like prizes at a fair. It was not something taught in the academy, as the entire subject related to Biju was something that Sarutobi had put a lid on, not wanting the next generation to know about it. This was stupid in her opinion. But she was honestly surprised at how Naruto reacted when he had read that part. He has called Hashirama a fool. Not only that, but he believed it was stupid to give away sentient creatures as peace offerings when they were in turn going to be sealed away and used for war. Not only that, but he said that for all of Hashirama's kindness and compassion, that what he was doing was in reality cruel and inhumane, trapping them and giving them away to be used as tools of war. It sickened him. Kyuubi was surprised and touched that Naruto felt that way. Never before had a human sympathized with them. Hell, her previous Jinchuriki Mito and Kushina never even bothered to befriend her. They believed if that they themselves were filled with love that they could counteract her hatred for humanity. And yet they never bothered to even try and fix the source of the problem. Her hatred for humanity. They did nothing but simply leave her in their seals and never communicating with her, treating her like some kind of animal and criminal. It wasn't her fault. It was humanity and the desire for more power that lead to things being the way they are. And yet for a human to take her side, to see that it was in fact humans who were to blame for their destruction, which was caused only because they wanted to get away from humans and be free, made her incredibly happy. And so, knowing how Naruto felt about things, tried to help him as best she could. Naturally this was difficult as her influence was small, but she did what she could. She tried to help his growth as best she could. Even going so far as to make sure he didn't die from malnutrition due to his constant diet of ramen. Outside of that, there wasn't much she could do, as she could not affect his mind. If she could, she would have gotten him to eat better, even if it meant stealing. But now she was faced with a problem. With Mizuki telling Naruto his status of a Jinchuriki, it did not take long for his emotional facade of happiness to shatter like glass, and all his pent-up emotions to boil to the surface. It would not be long before her power would be brought up as well, and she feared what would happen to the boy in his current state. He would most likely go berserk, and the more hateful ninja would be more inclined to simply kill him, especially after he had been tricked into stealing the scroll. She had to think fast. Her options were limited, stuck inside of the seal as she was. With Naruto soon to draw on her power, and the humans more than likely would be out for blood, she had to do something, and fast. She needed to get someone, anyone to help Naruto, but who? There was no one in the village who would be able to, and Naruto was alone in the middle of a clearing with a large clear lake in front. Wait, a clear lake. Yes, in front of Naruto was a crystal clear lake. And the only reason it was relevant was because there was one being who could use any clear surface to peer into the human world. But could she really call upon the renegade ruler of the Distortion itself to help Naruto? After a moment, she sighed in defeat. There truly was no other way. Well, there were others she could call upon that would be more inclined to help Naruto, none would get here fast enough to do so. I'm sorry Naruto, but I'm going to have to take my chances, as this accursed village is more than likely to kill you when you tap into my power. At least with that renegade, you'll have a chance at survival. I'll have to act fast. Said Kyuubi. And with that, she brought forth her power and had it latch onto Naruto's spiraling emotions, making it easy to bypass the seal and have her power come out. Back with Naruto in the clearing. While Naruto remained ignorant of his tenant's plans, he continued to let his emotions run rampant. He soon stood up, a crimson aura now enveloping his body. He then threw his head back and let out a beastly roar that could be heard all throughout the village. The crimson aura enveloping him soon turned into a fox-shaped shroud with a single tail. And while Naruto losing himself to his rage, Kyuubi took the chance to control her yokai as best she could through the seal and began writing her message on the water's surface. Normally this wouldn't be possible, but then again she was trying to communicate with a being in a whole different dimension, and she wasn't even human anyway, so she could bend the rules of reality a little bit. And as expected, it did not take long for the ninja to arrive. After all, it wasn't too long ago that they had been searching for Naruto and the Forbidden Scroll. And it was not surprising to see anger and fear in their eyes as they saw Naruto in a one-tailed make that two-tailed chakra cloak as the second tail had just formed. Though this increased her ability to write her message, as those damn letters they used were so strange, not to mention having to write it backwards, made it easier. The ninja seemed ready to attack before the Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen himself had arrived in full battle gear, though upon seeing Naruto in a two-tailed state, the look on his face had a melancholy expression on his face. Naruto, the old Hokage said. How could this have happened? I thought that everything had been resolved when we learned Mizuki had tricked Naruto into stealing the scroll. So how did this happen? Does Iruka know anything? I wanted to question him, but he had to be taken to the hospital immediately due to his injuries, and Mizuki. Could he have told Naruto about the fox? That has to be it. Mizuki must have told Naruto before trying to kill him. Damn it. Damn you to hell, you stupid bastard, Mizuki. Oda now angry Sarutobi at his revelation. Humming out of his thoughts, he looks on at Naruto covered in Kyuubi's chakra, his 2 chakra tails flailing behind him, not knowing of what the fox was really doing with them. But before Sarutobi could say anything, the lake behind Naruto glows and a giant black tentacle with a bright red spike on the end appears. Naruto, seeing their reactions, turns around only to see the tentacle wrap around him, lift him into the air, and then sink down into the clear lake and vanishing. Naruto. No. Yelled Sarutobi as he ran toward the lake in a vain attempt at trying to stop the tentacle from taking away Naruto. As the tentacle disappeared with Naruto, he could only look on in helplessly. When he got to the lake, all he could see was his reflection and no sign of Naruto or the strange tentacle that had taken him. No. This can't be happening. I promised myself that I would take care of Minato and Kushina's son. How could I have failed this badly? I should have done more for the boy, thought Sarutobi in sadness. X. A few moments ago. Location. In a dark place with platforms floating at many different angles. This world disobeys the normal laws of physics. As there were several small floating islands scattered about. Trees and rocks were simply growing out of the ground and then disappeared. Water was flowing at impossible angles and some even flowing upward in a defiance of gravity. But in this strange place, only one being actually lived here. The creature with 6 black ghostly streamers on its back that each has a bright red spike at the end. Its mouth is hidden by the head plates, which swing open sideways when the mouth is opening. Where legs would be, it has instead 6 spike-like protrusions. There are 4 more golden spikes near the edge of the tail. There are 3 gold half rings on its neck that can grip objects. This large creature is none other than Giratina, ruler of the Distortion world. It had been sent here by Arceus itself, and unlike the stories of it being banished, it was sent there to keep it stable in the event something would happen to it. Like Palkia and Dialga fighting each other, causing ruptures in time and space that could damage the Distortion world. The Giratina, while it was a lonely existence, it would rather have at least some company. Though the list of being that could even get here were small, and there weren't many legendaries even alive anymore. But while it was making its usual routine around the Distortion world, making sure there were no problems, it noticed something strange. It was an ominous orange-red glow shining into the Distortion world. Now normally Giratina wouldn't care about this, but it seemed as though someone was actually trying to get Giratina's attention, like when you hear an animal pawing at the door. Deciding to investigate, it came upon a strange sight. Giratina had the ability to use any clear surface to gaze into the real world, and upon seeing a human covered in a strange cloak of energy with 2 energy tails was certainly strange. What was stranger still was that the tails appeared to be trying to write something. Looking closer, it looked as though it was a crude imitation of unknown. When the tails finished, Giratina looked at the finished message. Giratina, help boy. I beg you. Kyuubi decision. Giratina's eyes widened at this. Sure, the message was choppy and the writing bad, but Giratina now understood what was going on. The boy had the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, having heard about it though the other legendaries. But what was surprising was that Kyuubi was actually begging of all things. To Giratina for help. And looking onward, it could certainly see why. Several other humans who looked ready to kill the poor boy. Now normally Giratina would not interfere with such things, but the Kyuubi was personally asking her for help. So making up its mind, Giratina opened up a portal and put a tentacle through the hole to get the boy. X. Back with Naruto. He didn't know what had happened. He remembered he was in the clearing in front of the lake. He then got angry at the truth of what he was being exposed. He vaguely remembered people in the clearing and his anger clouded mind. But before anyone could do anything, a giant tentacle had grabbed him, pulling him to God knows where. Wherever he had ended up had apparently brought him out of his anger-reduced state, cancelling the flow of the Kyuubi's chakra he felt. Upon feeling the tentacle let him go and falling on solid ground, he looked around and saw he was in a strange place. It was like gravity, nay reality itself was thrown out of whack. But he had little time to marvel at this new place when he heard a deep rumbling noise behind him. Slowly turning his head, he was met with a strange-looking and massive creature. It lowered its head so he could look straight into its red eye. And then, to his surprise, instead of eating him like he first thought, it spoke in a strange and distorted voice. Now then, care to tell me what was going on exactly? And why the Kyuubi sealed inside of you called upon me to help you? Said the creature. This floored Naruto. The Kyuubi actually called for help, and this creature answered. How did the fox do that, where he and what was the hell was this thing? Slowly, he began to speak. Who and what are you? He asked timidly. Giratina looked at him for a second. I suppose that's a fair question. I am Giratina, protector of this world, the Distortion, and one of the creation trio. Now, who are you? Naruto could only look on in awe and confusion at Giratina. Awe, because he had never seen something even remotely like Giratina in all his life. Confusion, because he had never even heard of this Giratina creature before, nor of the creation trio, or the Distortion world where he apparently was. In fact, he didn't even know what the hell the Kyuubi did to call on such a being to help him in the first place. What was going on here? Boy. Giratina got Naruto's attention. Why exactly did you call for my assistance? Asked Giratina. Naruto's eyes scrunched in confusion. What are you talking about? I didn't call for help. Hell, I've never even heard of you before. Said Naruto. Giratina grew confused at this. How could the boy not know of her? Giratina had very clearly seen the message for help, ignoring that it was poorly written and choppy. But from what the child said, it seemed that Kyuubi had called for help independently of the boy. But why? Giratina was under the impression that humans chose a young child to turn into a Jinchuriki and then begun training them in the Bijuu's powers. So unless the boy had a bad relationship with the Kyuubi, which seemed unlikely as the Kyuubi went through the trouble of calling for help from the master of the Distortion, then the Kyuubi had to care for the boy. Then the only other option is that the boy has no knowledge of the fox at all. But why? I thought those foolish humans always taught Jinchuriki early on to try and use the Bijuu's powers effectively. As the boy apparently has little to no contact with the fox makes this very likely. But this doesn't make any sense. Though Giratina. Boy Giratina was then cut off by Naruto. Hey. My name is not boy. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Remember it. Yelled Naruto. Giratina saw that the boy was shaking. In an attempt to hide his obvious fear, which was understandable in his position. Very well, Naruto Uzumaki. Can you please tell me exactly what happened before I grabbed you? I wish to know why the fox inside you would call for my aid. Asked Giratina. Naruto was hesitant to tell Giratina anything. Hell, he wasn't even sure why the fox had called upon this being to supposedly help him. Hell, he couldn't even clearly remember what had happened after he got to the lake. All that he could recall was getting really angry and then things got hazy after that. But he let out a sigh and decided he might as well tell Giratina what happened. Once the explanation is done, he said. That's everything that happened up till now. Giratina let out a mental sigh when the boy finished. The boy really had no idea he was the Jinchuriki till just before being brought to the Distortion. Though that begged the question. What to do now? Naruto had no knowledge of how to contact the Kyuubi, having only found out about it at all. So a different approach was needed to talk to the fox. Naruto. I need to speak with the fox inside of you. Said Giratina. Naruto's eyes widened at this. What? Why do you need to talk to the fox? And how would you even talk to him or her? Whatever. When he finished, Giratina got in the boy's face. Naruto. I understand you have had no contact with the fox, but I need to talk to it in order to find out exactly why it had called upon me for aid. And since you have no way of doing it yourself, we're going to be using a more indirect method of communication. This will make things easier as I will be able to talk directly to it as well. Do I have your permission to use this method? Seeing the boy's unsure look, Giratina added, don't worry, the process should not hurt. This seemed to ease the boy. Letting out a sigh, he nodded his head to Giratina's request. With that, Giratina turned around and after a bit of searching, grabbed what looked like an amorphous blob of metal. It somehow floated near the point of Giratina's upper right tentacle and brought it close to Naruto. Naruto, here in the Distortion world the normal laws of reality that apply to your world are warped here, like gravity. And motions to the chunks of floating rock everywhere. What I have here is a piece of the mirrors I use to look into the other world. With it, I can connect it to the seal holding Kyuubi so we can speak to the fox. Are you ready? Giratina asked. Naruto nodded at this and lifted up his shirt enough to show his seal. Giratina positioned the liquid metal near Naruto's seal and had a small string of it connect to the center of it. With that done, Giratina let out a roar at the metal, much like when opening a portal to the real world. The blob then began to change shape and took the form of an elongated octagon and looked like a polished mirror. Then, the part of it connected to Naruto turned red and soon the entire edge of the metallic mirror was red. When it finished, the mirror began to swirl with different colors. The swirling slowed down and soon the inside of the seal, the Kyuubi, began to come into focus. As the fox came into view, Naruto was clearly nervous. While he had felt sympathetic toward the Bijuu for being treated as mere possessions and tools of war, meeting one, let alone the Kyuubi that was sealed inside of him was something different altogether. But he steeled his resolve as he was about to see the source of the Leaf Village's hatred. Then, when the image finally came into focus, he could see it. with its orange fur, which was awesome in his opinion, large rabbit-like ears, and its 9 tails. Kyuubi, Naruto said quietly. But the fox's ears twitched, signifying it had heard him. Opening its eyes to reveal a deep red with a slit pupil looking right at him. I see. Said Kyuubi. So it did work. I take it you created this in order to speak with me, didn't you, Giratina? Yes. I was curious as to why you would ask me of all beings for help. Said Giratina, who had a curious look in its eyes, as did Naruto. Kyuubi then turned her gaze away from Giratina and looked upon her container Naruto. It was rather strange to be able to look at him through the small window Giratina had created. Letting out a sigh, she started talking. Of course. You have to understand that the Leaf Village hates Naruto, and very few that don't. There were even those that attacked him, but he was protected only because they feared he would call upon my power by accident. Even the village's leader, Sarutobi Hiruzen, who played the part of a grandfather to Naruto, did not truly care for the boy. Naruto's eyes widened at this. He had suspected it to be true, but a part of him did not want to believe it. Kyuubi sensed her container's anger and saw him looking down at the ground with his fists clenched in anger. Naruto. She said, getting his attention. I know this is hard to take in. And for that I'm sorry. Things should not have gone the way they did. When your father sealed me into you after I was forced to attack the village, she would have continued, but Naruto cut her off with a yell of what? What do you mean you were forced to attack the village? And what do you mean by my dad? Kyuubi's eyes widened at this. Of course, she had forgotten that the boy had no knowledge of his parents or the fact that the only one person besides her knew the truth of why she attacked. One was the person who did it, the fake Madara Uchiha. Kyuubi looked at Giratina. I'm sorry, but there are things that I have to tell the boy that were hidden from him. Is it alright if I fill him in before getting back to your question? Giratina nodded at this. After all, the information could be useful in some form or another, so Giratina decided to let the fox tell Naruto what she needed to tell him. And so she did, from who his parents are, to the spiral masked man who ripped her from Naruto's mother Kushina, the subsequent attack, having half of her power painfully ripped from her, and finally his parents dying after she had been sealed into him. When she finished, Naruto couldn't believe what he had just heard. He had finally found out who his parents were, something every orphan wanted to know more than anything, and he should have been happy. But he wasn't. His father, Minato, had sealed the Kyuubi inside of him. And he actually believed that the villagers would see him as a hero. What kind of idiotic idealistic nonsense is that? He couldn't have sealed the other half of Kyuubi into his mother, Kushina, and used the same seal he had used to take Kyuubi's other half into himself. After all, the man had long since died, meaning that the yang half of Kyuubi was still sealed inside of his corpse. But no, he willfully sealed the yin half of Kyuubi inside of him, knowing full well how people as a whole view and treat Jinchuriki, especially after just being attacked by one. But no, he had to preserve the balance, more like make sure the Leaf Village still had a weapon they could use. If he were able to, he would beat the ever-living hell out of that dumb bastard. But with a great deal of effort, he calmed himself down. He could deal with this revelation later, as right now there were more important things to deal with. Kyuubi. He finally said. He looked into the Kyuubi's eyes and said. Guess we both got the short end of the stick, eh? You got shoved inside of me to be used as a tool of war, and I'm treated like I have the plague because the fourth Hokage was stupid enough to trust the villagers. He said with a sad smile. Both noted the fact that Naruto did not call Minato his father, but rather as the fourth Hokage. But considering what he had just found out, it would be nigh impossible to call the man whose foolish ideology sentenced you to a life of suffering as father, but Kyuubi was happy he wasn't mad at her. If anything, he was sad that both of them had suffered for no good reason. I see. Said Giratina. This is all rather fascinating. But I believe it is time we got back to the main point. Now Kyuubi, what is it you want from me? I know enough about you that you didn't just summon me to simply help Naruto here escape. Said Giratina. Well, everything that had been revealed was interesting, as Giratina had not really bothered to keep track of how humanity had progressed after the Pokemon had been removed from that world. But it was time things got back on track. Giratina, you're right. I did not call for your aid to simply save him from the villagers. I called you in the hopes we would all be able to benefit from each other. Said Kyuubi, gaining confused looks from Giratina and Naruto. Naruto, as it stands, and I'm sorry to put it like this, the villagers will more than likely have you killed if you return. You tapped into my power, and even though you were tricked into stealing the scroll, I have no doubt that many people will push for your execution, if not some ninja doing it themselves. And the fact that I had called upon Giratina to save you probably only made things worse, considering they might think you're trying to recruit other demons to attack the village or some such nonsense. She said, and Naruto had a downcast expression at her words. And she was probably right. Even with the Hokage saying otherwise, he would most likely be executed, and even if he wasn't, who knows what they would do to him. This is why I have a proposition for you, Giratina. As Naruto will be slated for death, his life as a human is basically over. So, could you give him a new life, as his current one is basically over? Said Kyuubi with a grim tone. She sincerely hoped Giratina would go for it. If not, then the legendary could quite possibly send them back, or even leave them trapped within some secluded part of the Distortion world forever. But at the mentioning of giving Naruto a new life, Giratina's eyes widened and then narrowed. I see, so that's your game, is it? And what makes you think I would willingly do that? Well, I know that boy's plight is a serious one, I will not be easily swayed to do what you want. Said Giratina in a serious tone. What the fox was asking for was rather serious and not something that would normally be done. Oh really? I thought that you would be more welcoming to the idea. Especially since what happened all those years ago, you and the others were shoved with more responsibilities because of it. With this, your burdens would be significantly lighter. Said Kyuubi. She had known that Giratina would be rather resistant to the idea, but had hoped Giratina would not be as opposed to it as it was. Naruto, on the other hand, had no idea what was going on. As if having a titanic beast of destruction that was sealed in his gut talking through a magic mirror to some kind of strange eldritch being from another dimension wasn't strange enough. But apparently whatever it was they were talking about was something that Giratina didn't really like and something that Kyuubi wanted the other to do. They were basically making some kind of important, life-changing decision for him and wouldn't even include him in on it. Well, he wasn't going to have any of that. He was Naruto Uzumaki and doesn't let anyone decide anything for him, let alone something like this. Hey. What the hell are the two of you talking about? In case you two have forgotten, I'm still here and I don't know what's going on. Yelled Naruto, causing both Giratina and Kyuubi to look at him. As soon as they did, Naruto suddenly felt very small at having two powerful beings giving him their undivided attention, never mind that one of them was sealed inside of him. The two of them look at each other and then nod. I suppose it's only fair that Naruto know what it is we're talking about. After all, it is a serious subject. Said Kyuubi. Giratina closed its eyes and let out a sigh. Opening its eyes again, it looked directly at Naruto. You're right, Naruto. Before I get to that, there are a few things I have to explain to you about what I am exactly. And so Giratina explained to Naruto the history of Pokemon, what they were, and how they were all created due to their god Arceus. Giratina also went to explain the reason that Pokemon no longer inhabited the world of humans, is that when those who sought to try and control the vast power that they had, Arceus had had enough of it and so took every single last Pokemon in the world and moved them to a new dimension entirely, similar to that of summoning realms like the toads, snakes, and so on and so forth. But the process to do this required the help of all the major legendaries. This left the other ones to make sure none of the greedy humans got in the way and stopped them. And they were successful but at a terrible cost. While the lesser legendaries did in fact keep the greedy humans occupied, many of them died in the process. Though when the process was complete, Arceus was furious that the humans had, in their greed, had not only killed the legendaries, but were taking their lifeless bodies away for experimentation. Arceus and the remaining legendaries quickly put a stop to this and recovered their remains. But Arceus was not satisfied. Two people from Team Galactic knowing about different dimensions, Arceus believed that they would one day find a way to breach the dimension that had become the new home for all the Pokemon and made its decision. To erase them from existence entirely. After those who sought to use Pokemon for their own greed were irradiated, leaving only a handful at the most who survived, as Arceus and the others were rather thorough in this, Pokemon as a whole eventually began to become little more than a myth over the years until maybe only a few humans left alive today even heard of Pokemon, let alone know much about them. With Giratina's tale done, Naruto was speechless. He honestly couldn't believe that at one point the whole world was full of creatures just like Giratina, though most were much smaller, but still. Though he did feel bad for those that lost their lives so their brethren could escape. Thinking about it, the Pokemon were much like the Bijuu, in that they were hunted down and captured for the sole purpose of being used in whatever form their captor wanted. But one thing still puzzled him though. But what does that have to do with what you two were talking about? Asked Naruto. Giratina sighed, knowing this next part wasn't going to be easy. Naruto. I told you all that not just so you knew my kind's history, but so you know that several legendaries are dead. And under normal circumstances, there is no way to bring them back to life. What Kyuubi is suggesting I do is to in fact end your life as a human and turn you into one of the legendaries that perished. Said Giratina. Naruto's eyes bugged out in shock when he heard this. Kyuubi wanted Giratina to turn him into a Pokemon. And one of the legendary ones at that. He then slowly turned his head to Kyuubi and looked as though he tried to speak, but no words came out. Naruto, please understand. Your life as a human is basically over. The village hated you from the day you were born, and after what happened, I don't think they will be fine with nothing less than your head on a pike. Kyuubi said with sadness and regret. Honestly, she knew the odds were slim that her gamble and summoning Giratina would pan out, let alone getting it to give in and turn Naruto into a legendary. But please understand, Naruto, that there really isn't much choice. Even if you did go back to the human world and leave Konoha, you would merely be hunted down by them and any other village that would want to use you and me to increase their own military power. But if you could become a legendary, that would immediately change. As a legendary, the only being you would have to obey would be Arceus, and to an extent the other legendaries on the same level of power as Giratina. You would be free to do as you pleased. She then turned his attention to Giratina. So please Giratina, do this for him. Both of you only stand to gain from this. You and the others get to bring back a legendary that had died, and Naruto gets to be free of the hatred and pain. She finished with pleading eyes. While she may be the strongest of the 9 Biju, she truly did want this to happen. There simply was no other alternative. Naruto felt conflicting emotions. On one hand he felt touched that the great and powerful Kyuubi of all beings would plead for Giratina to turn him into a legendary so that he wouldn't have to suffer as a human anymore. But scared as well, as if he did turn into a legendary, he had no idea what kind of creature he would be turning into, let alone what would happen to the Kyuubi if he did. Giratina closed its eyes as it was getting a headache. It wasn't as if Giratina couldn't turn Naruto into a legendary, which was not the problem. The problem was how Arceus would react to it. While it wouldn't really be desecrating their graves, as it would be more akin to a reincarnation, Giratina was not sure how Arceus would be happy that Giratina had been able to find a way to bring the legendaries back, or furious that she had turned a human into new legendary. However, something broke Giratina from its thoughts. A presence that hadn't been felt for a very long time. Upon realizing what the feeling was, Giratina merely let out a sigh as it knew now what to do. After all, even in the Distortion realm, Arceus is the god of all Pokemon, including whatever realm they might be in. So, with the surprising approval of Arceus, Giratina spoke. Very well, you've made your point, Kyuubi. But, is this what you want, Naruto? To throw away your humanity and to become a Pokemon like me? Not only that, but if you go through with it, I don't know which legendary you will become. Said Giratina. Well, Giratina would normally be happy about something like this, as the number of legendaries that had died was quite a problem, though not as big a problem considering they didn't have to deal with any humans trying to capture them and abuse their power. But it was either become a legendary, or go back to his world and die, or be hunted like an animal. The illusion of choice was merely to give him some comfort that he could willingly choose his fate. But Naruto took a while to respond. After all, how could he? He was given a life-altering decision to make. But thinking on it, what reason did he have to say no? While he had never been physically abused in the Leaf due to the ninja keeping him safe, he had never felt safe either. It was as if the ninja guarding him were only doing so because they were ordered to, and if they hadn't, they would have let the villagers beat him. But still, he suffered emotionally and mentally due to how the villagers treated him. Many a time when he was younger he had felt soul-crushing loneliness and despair, and only the comforting words of someone who he now fully believed to have been the Kyuubi, whispering sweet nothings into his ear to make him feel better. And besides, it wasn't as if there was anyone truly important to him in the Leaf Village. Sure, there were the Ichiraku family and Iruka, but those bonds he had with them wasn't much, considering one was little more than a student teacher, and the other was only because they didn't throw him out when he went there to eat. Stealing his resolve, Naruto had only one last question before he truly made his decision. Giratina. If I do agree to this, to become a legendary, what will happen to Kyuubi? Will it still be sealed inside of me, or what? This was not what they were expecting from the boy. They were both surprised, Kyuubi more so than Giratina. Kyuubi was touched that Naruto cared enough for her well-being to ask something like that. She herself didn't really wonder what would happen to her, as she was more focused on helping Naruto as best she could. Giratina was first to regain its composure at the sudden question and answered. Worry not, Naruto. When the process begins, I will remove the Kyuubi from her seal, so her presence will not interfere with the change. She will be perfectly fine. While thinking it will also allow me to remove those other signatures from inside him as well. I don't know why he has 2 other souls inside of him, but we can figure that out after the transformation is complete. Though while Naruto was happy, he was surprised once more that Kyuubi was actually a woman. While he was not sexist or anything, he just didn't know whether or not the fox was male or female. Though he supposed it was less creepy to have a female sealed inside of him than a dude. Naruto let out a sigh and looked at Giratina. Alright then, I'm ready when you are. With that, Giratina moved all of its tentacles to Naruto and stabbed them into the ground around him. Then, strange runes appeared around him and the spots where Giratina now began glowing and they connected to each other in the form of a hexagon. With this done, Giratina then took the tentacles and positioned them around the seal on Naruto's stomach. Naruto and Giratina's eyes met and he gave a firm nod. With that, the ray glowed brightly and soon engulfed Naruto. Giratina reacted quickly, connecting to the seal and began to pull on it. If she failed, there was no telling what could happen to the both of them. Pulling as hard as possible, it ripped out the Kyuubi, who landed with a loud crash, along with the other two souls that had been stuck in there, and quickly tucked those away to later discuss what they are. Kyuubi, even though disoriented, turned around as best she could to look at the now large glowing orb that Naruto was inside. She could only look on in anticipation as to what Naruto would become when he exited the sphere. Though there was apprehension. After all, while Naruto did not hate her for what had happened, she didn't know how to even try to start a real relationship with him. Giratina was also nervous. After all, this had never happened before and had no idea how long it would take or even what would come out when it was all done. Though Giratina hoped that out of all the possible legendaries he could become, Giratina sincerely hoped that he did not become that legendary. As even though that one had fought alongside the others during that battle, it only did so because it reveled in destruction, and it was only able to die because there was no life force anywhere near for it to steal to revive itself. But looking upon the orb, Giratina could not shake the feeling of dread that soon came. And to make things worse, the orb changed from white to a dark red with black marking. Then cracks began to appear. It did not take long for them to appear all over the orb, and when it finally reached the top, it completely shattered, letting out a burst of dark red energy that felt of death. After the energy dissipated, Kyuubi and Giratina looked upon Naruto's new form. One with joy at the feeling of the dangerous aura it was giving off, and the other with trepidation at seeing the one legendary it did not want to see. It revealed a large avian-like Pokemon. Its body is dark in coloration and is adorned with grayish patterns along the underside. Its wings and tails have 3 points extending along the edges, close to where they meet the body. There are 5 large claws on each appendage, 3 of which curve inwards. Yveltal's underside is bright red, with branching black markings. Similar markings are present on its head and neck. It has a pointed beak-like snout. Black horns extend from above its blue eyes, with a sharply curved portion pointing forward and thinner prongs facing the rear. A feathery gray ruff encircles its neck and billows out over its back. It also has small bird-like legs with powerful talons. Like the rest of the underside, the legs are red with black adornments, and the talons are gray. Each foot has 2 toes facing forward and 1 pointing backwards. It then is fully extended, resembling the letter Y. Out of all the possible legendaries he could have become, he had to turn into Yveltal, the legendary of destruction. Said Giratina with worry in its voice. Though Kyuubi was of an entirely different opinion. That aura. It's incredible. I can practically feel this thing's desire for destruction. I have no idea what Naruto is exactly, but his new power and aura are so alluring. Though Kyuubi with a dreamy grin on her face. X. And done. Okay, here are a few things. No, Sarutobi doesn't care about Naruto as much as he would make it seem he does. After all, he has the entire village to think about, which has thousands of people in it. Naruto is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and potentially a very powerful shinobi. While as old as he is, he does possess some paternal instincts to keep Naruto safe, as well as his promise to Minato and Kushina to take care of him as best he can. But, he is also the leader of Konoha and a military leader, so he must also view Naruto's potential as a military asset due to his lineage and him being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. So he is torn between seeing Naruto as a military asset and as the lonely child he is. And because Kyuubi can only sense negative emotions, she would sense the feeling Sarutobi has on Naruto's fighting potential and therefore come to the conclusion that him caring for Naruto is merely a farce. But yes, Sarutobi does care for Naruto, as Naruto helped fill the void created by Asuma leaving the village and the fact his wife had died as well. Yeah, all but the most important legendaries are dead. This includes Palkia, Dialga, Giratina, obviously Arceus, Kyurem, Reshiram, and Zekrom. There are a few others, but I'll leave that as a surprise. And yes, Giratina did just pull out the Kyuubi. But this was only due to the fact that Naruto was basically being reincarnated into Yveltal, and as such, his old life as a human was over and he basically died, therefore allowing Giratina to pull out Kyuubi with little problem. And because Naruto died, Minato and Kushina's chakra could not activate as the situation was not the right one to activate their chakra. Well, maybe Minato's, but this is my fanfic, so I'm fudging the rules a bit. Also, about why Giratina did not want to see Yveltal. In the Pokédex, it was called the Destruction Pokemon. And its entry even said that when it died, it took the life force of everything around it to revive itself, like some kind of evil phoenix. So with these in mind, I would imagine Yveltal to be a rather nasty Pokemon. And remember, even though I made Kyuubi nicer, it is still a being of mass destruction. And as such, it would enjoy the feeling of Naruto Yveltal's aura a great deal. When Naruto had emerged from the cocoon, he could hardly believe it. He could feel the power of his new body and it felt incredible. Looking over at Kyuubi, he noticed that she was looking at him with a look he wasn't used to. If he had to guess, it was enjoyment. He guessed she could also feel his power as well and seemed to like it. A little too much, if the look was anything to go by. But looking at Giratina, he could immediately tell it was not happy. It was like Giratina was displeased by what he had turned into. But he didn't understand why. It had worked, didn't it? He had become a legendary and Kyuubi was free. Giratina should be happy. Yet why did Giratina have such an uneasy look upon its face? He was about to ask what was wrong when he felt the wind of the distortion whirled upon his skin. Looking down at himself, he finally saw his new form and he was shocked. He knew that from Giratina's descriptions of Pokemon that after he became a legendary he would not have a human form, but he didn't think it would be this drastic. Hell, he was well over 10 feet tall. Looking at himself, his chest was mainly red with strange black lines going over it. For legs, they looked like those of birds. And when he looked at his arms, they were bird wings, with what looked like sharp talon-like claw fingers on the ends of them. Bringing them up to his head, he could even feel horns. Just what the hell kind of legendary had he turned into? He would have continued to freak out, but Kyuubi and Giratina were right there watching, and so Kyuubi was able to break out of her enjoyment of the feeling of her former container's power and stood on her legs and put her arms on his shoulders and said, "Naruto. Naruto, calm down. Everything is alright. The change was a success, you're a legendary now." And this seemed to work, as Naruto then looked right into Kyuubi's eyes and saw worry in them. "Kyuubi, wow, what am I?" Naruto said with the voice of his new body, which came out like some kind of a deep guttural sound mixed with screeching. While he was beginning to calm down, it was rather strange trying to stand on his new legs, considering his new body was completely different than his old one. Heck, if not for his tail keeping him steady, a tail. Looking behind him, he indeed had a tail. Not one of feathers like normal birds, which he believed he was one, but it was flesh and blood. His bout of freaking out would have started again until Giratina spoke. "Naruto." This caught both Kyuubi and Naruto's attention. "I know exactly which legendary you are. To be honest, I had never thought that you would have become this specific legendary out of all the possibilities, but I suppose I should have known it was a possibility. But to answer your question, the legendary you have become is the destruction Pokemon, Yveltal," Giratina said, surprising Naruto. He was the legendary Pokemon of destruction. What the hell? Naruto, or rather, you are Yveltal now. Well, I did not have much contact with the previous one, there is much I can tell you about it. Not only that, but as a legendary, there are several things you need to know as well. But I believe it would be easier if we changed forms for the explanation. Now this gained a confused look from Naruto and a raised eyebrow from Kyuubi. "What do you mean by change forms?" asked Naruto. "I believe what Giratina means is that we take on human form," said Kyuubi, getting a nod from Giratina. But Naruto on the other hand was surprised again. He had no idea they could take on human form. When he agreed to become a legendary Pokemon, he was fully committed to forever forsake having a human body. And yet he could apparently change back into a human form. Before he could think further, Kyuubi began to glow a bright red and then shrink down. It didn't take long for her to shrink down to about 5'6" in height. When the light died down, Naruto was blushing, not that you could tell since his face was naturally the color red now, at her new form. It was no surprise that she had red hair, but it was a bit wild and had black tips. There was also a rather sizable turquoise-like gem near the bottom of her hair, which reached past her knees. Though she was wearing a rather provocative skin-tight gray shirt that showed off her generous bust, being around a large C to low D, she also had light gray pants, but wasn't wearing any shoes. She has red markings around her eye, which were turquoise. Her skin, while having a small tan to it, was flawless. 1. All in all, she was beautiful, and Naruto was even more embarrassed now knowing he had such a woman sealed inside of him. With her only being a fox was one thing, as they were different species. But with her now being able to take human form, as well as he can apparently, things just suddenly became even more embarrassing. 2. Especially when he noticed her giving him a wink, noticing that he had been checking her out. "Now then Naruto, it's your turn," said Kyuubi in a beautiful voice that sent shivers up his spine. But Naruto wasn't sure how to change back into a human. He had just finished turning into a giant bird of destruction. And now he was supposed to change back into a human. How the hell was he supposed to do that? He looked at Giratina for a possible explanation and gave her a questioning look. "I'm not sure how to help you, Naruto. For me, it's instinctual, so I don't know exactly how to explain it," said Giratina with a sigh. A sudden yell of "I've got it" brought their attention to Kyuubi. "I know how you can turn into a human, Naruto. Remember the transformation technique? Why not try to do that?" And it made sense. While Naruto wasn't even sure if he could do jutsu as a Pokemon now, which would suck because he spent all that time learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu, but the idea had merit. So he would just basically channel his energy and change form, just like with the transformation technique. And so he brought his hands clawed wings together and closed his eyes in concentration, imaging himself as a human. It took a while, as he was not quite used to the feel of his new body yet, but soon he felt the familiar surge of power from within and felt himself change. His body glowed in a mixture of black and red and he began to shrink. When the light died down, there were some rather drastic changes. Well, before he was slightly below average height for a 15-year-old at 5'5", now he had grown several inches and was now 5'10". His blonde hair was replaced with scarlet locks, with black streaks in his hair that looked like small horns. If one looked close enough, there were still some blonde locks in there. His eyes had actually stayed the same blue they had always been, but his whisker marks had disappeared. He is wearing a red full-length coat with black branch-like lines, like the ones on Yveltal's body. It has a hood with grey fur trim and waist-high slit going up the back. It has a large silver zipper that fastens at the top and zips down to seal the coat. It has gold drawstrings for the hood decorated with a large ruby red bead hanging from the end and a silver chain ornament adorned with 4 large obsidian claws that fasten to a loop on either side of the collarbone region. The coat was open, revealing his well-muscled form. He had on a red shirt with black lines going from his arms that met in the chest area and going down the middle, making the shape of a Y. He had on black pants and his clawed boots. All in all, he looked rather intimidating, and Kyuubi unconsciously licked her lips at Naruto's new form as the coat was unzipped, giving her a clear view of his rather defined form. She knew from being inside of him that he was very fit and his transformation added to it. I wonder what else his transformation has improved. She thought with a perverse giggle, though Naruto didn't notice as he was too busy checking out his new form. When the light died down, Giratina's human form was revealed and both Kyuubi and Naruto was surprised to find out Giratina was in fact a woman as well. She stood at an astounding 6'2", which was insanely tall for a woman, and had pale skin. She had a red and black striped design going down the middle of a silvery gray corset dress with black finger-like tails with red claws in the back. Knee-length boots with red and black stripe going down from top to bottom at the center. Black wings with red claws protruding from the back. Silvery colored hair reaching close to the feet from the back and same would go with a bang up front. A golden crown of sorts with golden accessories wrapping around various places on the arms, legs, neck and ears. 3. But before either Kyuubi or Giratina could say anything, Naruto passed out. They quickly rushed to his side to figure out what was wrong, but to their surprise he was sleeping soundly. Kyuubi let out a sigh at this. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Not long ago he had been tricked by Mizuki into stealing the Forbidden Scroll, learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu, tapping into my power to contact you, and being from an entirely different dimension to save him. Then he found out who his parents were and got turned into a giant bird of doom and destruction, me being released from his gut, finding out I was a beautiful woman, and then you took on a human form as well, which turned out to be female like me. Taking all this into consideration, and it was little surprise he had passed out after so many things happening in such a short succession. Giratina let out a sigh at this. Well, she could agree that Naruto had been through quite a lot in a short amount of time, and honestly she was quite surprised that he hadn't passed out sooner, as the change into Yveltal, and then immediately using his powers to change into human form, would have put a strain on him, and was impressed when he didn't. Sighing, she said. Let's get him to bed. Kyuubi looked at her strangely at this. You have a bed? Here? She asked incredulously. And it was a legitimate question. After all, why would something like that be in the Distortion world? Giratina gave her a blank look. I have need of sleep as well, just like any other creature. And since you're so enamored with the boy, you get the pleasure of carrying him. She said and walked off. Sighing, Kyuubi went back to Naruto and lifted him up. While his changes made him heavier, she was still a Bijuu, and even his new weight was nothing to her. Though she rather enjoyed the piggyback when he brought his arms around her in a hug and snuggled into the nape of her neck. Not to mention she could feel his muscles, as even though they were not fully developed as he still had some growing to do, were still nice and firm. As well as his butt, which she managed to cope a feel of while carrying him to Giratina's home in the Distortion. And going by the feeling of what was poking her in her back, Naruto had been improved quite a bit. And she was going to have so much fun teasing the boy about it too. Back in Konoha. Though well things had begun looking up for Naruto, things were not for the old Hokage, Sarutobi. The night had only gone from bad to worse. He was working late at night, dealing with paperwork, when Naruto came in and knocked him out with his sexy jutsu and ran off with the Forbidden Scroll. When he came to, he had sent his ninja with the explicit order to not harm Naruto or they would be severely punished. When they did, they found a wounded Iruka and Mizuki who had been beaten to a bloody pulp. They had managed to recover the scroll. Mizuki had been taken to be interrogated after he recovered enough, and Iruka was taken to the hospital as well before he would be questioned, something he now regretted not having done immediately. He truly wished he did, so he would have known Mizuki had shot his mouth off and told Naruto the truth of what he was. A Jinchuriki. To make matters worse, Naruto had actually tapped into the fox's chakra, no doubt because of what Mizuki had told him, and things simply spiraling out of control from there. He had gotten to the location as fast as his old legs could get him, and just in time too, as it seemed as the ninja were getting ready to attack him and make things infinitely worse. But still, he felt his heart break at seeing Naruto like that. It seemed so wrong to see someone like him, a bright and cheery lad, even if somewhat forced, he noticed, to be cloaked in such vile and evil-feeling chakra. Truly, if he could have, he would have given his life instead of Minato and Kushina so they could have been there for their son, as in his old age, there was only so much he could do to keep the boy safe from harm. It was all he could do just to keep the boy from being lynched. Hell, he even got Minato and Kushina's old friends who were now clan heads to help the boy when they could, making sure to guilt-trip them so that they would. In fact, he didn't care what he had to do to get them to agree, but he was rather glad that it didn't take much to get them to. But still, people were still tense when they found out Naruto had stolen the scroll, and it had only gotten worse when he had used the Kyuubi's chakra, not long after that had been resolved. But still, one thing truly bothered him. That thing that grabbed Naruto now held his utmost attention. What was it? Where did it come from? Where did it go when it took Naruto into that portal? There were so many questions regarding what the hell had happened, and he knew for certain that it was in no way related to anything Naruto could have learned in the Forbidden Scroll. But he was broken from his thoughts when a shinobi had kneeled and said, "The council is ready, Lord Hokage." And left after that. Sarutobi pinched the bridge of his nose at having to deal with the council. He had hoped to keep the situation contained when Naruto stole the scroll, but when he used the Kyuubi's chakra, many had been awoken by it, remembering the feel of its power when it attacked. He just knew he was going to get a major headache. Before heading to the council chambers, he took one last look at the pictures of the previous Hokages hanging on the wall. His eyes landed on Minato's. "Minato, I've done my best to help your son. It wasn't bad enough that the people of the village you died for hated your son, but it seems like even otherworldly beings have it in for him. I truly wish you were alive, as no doubt you would probably have some way of getting him back, as you were the only other person besides Tobirama who had mastered space-time jutsu." He though sadly and made his way to the council chambers, preparing himself for the headache he was sure to get. Sarutobi soon made his way to the council chambers, to be more accurate was more of a war room, as it was used when things had truly gone bad. And the resident Jinchuriki Naruto Uzumaki, child of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, disappearing into a vortex after being grabbed by the tentacle of some unknown creature, certainly classified as things having gone bad. All of the clan heads were there. Toza Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Hiyashi Hyuga, Inoichi Yamanaka, Sumin Yazuka, Shibi Aburam, and even the Kurama clan, now led by Unkai Kurama, as the current Arasukuma was too young, had showed up, as well as Danzo Shimura. Seeing that everyone was in attendance, Sarutobi took his seat. And he put up his hand to silence them before they could say anything. The final member was Mikoto Uchiha, who along with several others, survived Itachi's slaughter of the clan. The only reason there were any survivors was because many of them went on an impromptu vacation to Tenzukugai, which was a business trip turned vacation for the clan members, and were too far away for Itachi to get to them. While many were glad they survived, the clan as a whole was struggling due to the drastic drop in members, and the few that were still alive were mostly children and those who were not able to become ninja. Sarutobi then began speaking to them all. As you all know, earlier today Naruto Uzumaki had stolen the Forbidden Scroll, but it was retrieved and revealed that Chunin Mizuki had deceived Naruto into stealing the scroll for him. But as he is unconscious right now, we don't know who exactly he was going to bring it to. With him in custody, Yumino Iruka had been taken to the hospital to treat his injuries. While knowing the Forbidden Scroll was safe again was good to know, that was not what they were here for. Well, that is good to know, Hokage-sama, that is not what we are here for. Can you please explain to me why Naruto Uzumaki tapped into the Kyuubi's chakra not long after the scroll had been recovered? Asked Danzo. Well, he was greatly surprised and somewhat impressed that Naruto had been able to sneak into the tower and steal the scroll, which at the same time angered him that their security had been so lax that someone could sneak in and steal it at all. Sarutobi let out a sigh at this. During the confrontation between Naruto, Mizuki and Iruka, it appears that Mizuki told Naruto the truth, that he is in fact the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. This got a collective gasp out of many of the clan heads. But Tsun was the first to react. If Mizuki really did spill the beans and tell Naruto the truth, then why the hell didn't you run damage control? I mean, Iruka was there as well, so he should have been able to tell you what happened," said an angry Tsume. Though well Saratobi didn't like her blatant disrespect of him being Hokage by talking to him like that, he couldn't fault her for it. After all, even with his injuries, Iruka would have been able to give a statement on what had happened. But all that he had managed to say before being taken to the hospital was that Mizuki was the traitor and Naruto was innocent. "I didn't know because the Anbu who found Iruka only got enough out of him to know that Naruto was innocent in this ordeal and then he was taken to the hospital," said Saratobi and silently cursed the fact that his Anbu did not get the whole story from Iruka before getting him to the hospital or at least sending someone with him to get the complete rundown of what happened. But something was bothering Shikaku. While everything made sense to him, one thing did not. But what exactly happened to Naruto? We all felt him using the Kyuubi's chakra but then it suddenly disappeared without a trace. And I know that we do not have anyone in the village capable of restraining that chakra as Tenzo is out of the village on a mission last I heard and there have been no reports of someone peeping on the bathhouses which means Jiraiya is not here either. And he had a point. Jiraiya was well known to be a pervert and would peep on the bathhouses whenever he was in Konoha, so no reports of anyone doing so meant that he wasn't here in the village. And since Tenzo, the only one to survive Orochimaru's experiments, was out on a mission, fear began to creep into their hearts as they began to think of how exactly Naruto stopped using that chakra. After all, not only did Saratobi make no mention of Naruto using the chakra being dealt with and the only two in the village who could effectively stop Naruto, they could only imagine what had happened. "Lord Hokage, how exactly did you get Naruto to stop using the fox's chakra?" "He isn't," said Choza, leaving the question hang in the air. He was a jovial man and loved children. Often he would give Naruto food when he could and was considered an honorary Akamichi. The mere thought of a child being dead, let alone that child belonging to his dead friends Minato and Kushina, was not something he wanted to believe. But Choza's question made everyone tense. Many there were also friends with Naruto's parents and dreaded the answer the Hokage had for them. Seeing their anticipation for his answer, he was not sure how well they would take the truth of what had happened. While he wanted to believe Naruto wasn't dead, he couldn't be sure as to what really happened after he disappeared like that. "No Choza, Naruto is not dead," said Saratobi, which everyone visibly relaxed at this. "But I'm afraid I don't know exactly what has happened to Naruto." And this got him strange looks from everyone else. "Lord Hokage, what do you mean by that? How could you not know what has happened to him? Did it have anything to do with that strange energy signature that appeared near him? I thought that it's some form of sealing you had done to stop the boy from using the fox's chakra," said Hiashi confused. "No, in fact what really happened was something I have never seen before. When I arrived at the clearing, I saw Naruto in a two-tailed cloak of the fox's chakra with several of my ninja there as well. When I looked at Naruto, his eyes were a whirlwind of emotions, no doubt from Mizuki telling him the truth and his emotions spiraling from there. But before I could even say anything, a portal opened behind Naruto and a giant black tentacle with a red spike on the end of it came from it and wrapped around Naruto, pulling him back to wherever it came from and closed," said Saratobi, recalling what had happened. When he finished, no one knew exactly what to say. Well, as ninja, they had all seen some pretty strange things, as well as people who could do amazing things. But a giant tentacle appearing out of a portal and snatching Naruto. "So, what you're saying is that not only did we lose our Jinchuriki to some creature, but you have no idea what said creature was or where it had taken him," said Danzo, holding in his anger at this information, and Saratobi could only nod shamefully. He couldn't believe it. Well, he wholeheartedly believed that the boy being kept ignorant of the fox was a stupid plan, as he believed that the boy would more than likely explode with anger and use the fox's chakra, much like what had happened. But the fact that something had penetrated their defenses and stealing the boy from right in front of them. He couldn't believe it. How could someone have infiltrated their defenses and some unknown summoned creature, as that was the only thing that it could have been, kidnap the only Uzumaki in the village? Unless. Wait. Could it have been possible that Mizuki was not working alone? That whoever he intended to give the scroll to had some kind of summoning contract and brought forth some kind of creature to kidnap Naruto? Said Danzo. But that wouldn't make any sense. Mizuki tried to kill Naruto. Why would his accomplices try to then kidnap him? Said Inoichi. That was more than likely Mizuki's own desire to kill Naruto. Maybe when whoever his accomplices were found out that getting the scroll was a bust, they went for the next best thing, a Jinchuriki. And since Mizuki could have said just about anything when he told Naruto he was a Jinchuriki, Naruto would have become emotionally unstable and without Lord Hokage to tell Naruto the truth, could be easily manipulated by whoever captured him and be turned against us. Said a grim Shukaku, and everyone's eyes widened in horror. And he was right. With Naruto's state of mind after finding out the truth, he would feel betrayed. And if the person who had Mizuki try and steal the forbidden scroll for them had infiltrated the village far enough to make him a traitor, who knew what other kind of information they might have had. Or even of Naruto, for him to be taken as a consolation prize for losing the scroll, or possibly even having been targeted for kidnapping as well, which was possible considering Mizuki singled him out for his plan. Either scenario was bad in Sarutobi's opinion. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes and yelled, "Everyone. I don't care how you do it, but we must find Naruto. If possible, I want all of you to try to find any and all information on what kind of creature might have taken Naruto to narrow down the search for who would have the contract. Inoichi, I don't care how you do it, but I want Mizuki in spilling everything he knows. You have my full permission to use any and all methods to do so. In fact, interrogate his fiancé if you feel it necessary. Tsume, Shibi, Hiashi, I want members of your clan to go to Mizuki's house and see if they can find anything about who he had been in contact with. I want to know whoever put Mizuki up to this and find out whoever it is kidnapped Naruto. In fact, I want a thorough sweep of our forces to weed out any other possible traitors. You all know as well as I do how badly this could end up and how much we owe it to them to find Naruto and make sure he was safe." And everyone all agreed with this. While Sarutobi authorizing the usage of any and all means to get Mizuki to talk was a bit shocking, as some of those methods would be considered inhumane and not something the peace-loving Sandaime would condone. But even the grandfatherly Hokage would do what was necessary to find out what had happened to Naruto, as the boy was too important and dangerous to have him fall into the wrong hands. After all, Naruto was a Jinchuriki to the strongest tailed beast, which was bad enough. But if the person who kidnapped him knew of whom the boy's parents really were, then things were really going to get ugly. They could all only hope, either out of personally caring for the boy or to simply have the village's Jinchuriki back, that he would be found safe and unharmed. Back with Naruto, sometime after passing out. It had taken some time, but Naruto was finally beginning to wake up. Opening his eyes, he was greeted with the sight of the random floating landmasses littering the Distortion world. And then the events of how he got into this dimension came back to him. Of being Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, of his parents, and of the betrayal of the Sandai Hokage. While he could understand that the knowledge of his father, the fourth Hokage Minato, would be something to be kept secret, it was another thing to keep the knowledge of his mother, let alone Kyuubi, a secret from him as well. You don't not tell someone that they have used to have a giant demon sealed inside of them. In fact, he shouldn't have had to have a traitor tell him before trying to murder him. Or of his mother. In fact, one would think that Konoha would be happy to know they still had an Uzumaki alive in their village, as the Uzumaki clan had been a long-standing ally to Konoha before its destruction and its people scattered. Or rather, they would, if not for the fact that the Uzumaki clan and Uzushio itself was more or less stricken from the history books, and no one of his generation even knowing of it. The only reason he knew of it was because when reading about Hashirama's exploits, it said that he had married Mito Uzumaki and told of their clan. But even with the fact all that had been hidden from him, he wasn't sure if he really cared anymore. After all, he wasn't even human, and as a legendary, did he really have to go back there? Out of all the people in the entirety of the Leaf Village, only a few people were even remotely kind to him, but whatever bond he had with them was not enough to really make him stay when he thought about it. Though he did feel that he at least wanted to claim everything that rightfully belonged to him, whatever his parents might have left him, but besides that, he wasn't sure what to do. Heck, he wasn't even sure what duties he was supposed to perform now that he was a legendary. He soon got a headache from overthinking his new situation and proceeded to shut his eyes and snuggle into his soft pillow, which he idly noticed smelled nice. Wait. Pillows didn't smell nice, and they felt rather different from normal pillows. Bringing his hand up, he touched the pillow, but to his surprise, he got a moan in return. But he froze when he heard "My, aren't you rather daring?" And even after only hearing it for a bit, he turned his head and was looking straight into the golden eyes of Kyuubi. He then quickly looked down to see where his hand and where his head was resting before that he had in fact groped her chest. Blushing profusely, he quickly jumped away from her. He tried to stammer out an apology, but she got up and made her way over to him with a sway in her hips, and she brought her hand up in a shushing manner. "You know, Naruto, if you wanted to touch them, you could have simply asked," she said in an amused tone, making Naruto as red as his new hair color. Naruto's embarrassment would have continued had Giratina not cleared her throat, getting their attention. "If you two are done, we have some important things to discuss now," said Giratina. Naruto let out a sigh of relief of being saved from further embarrassment, while Kyuubi let out a cute pout at her fun being ruined. Giratina then continued speaking. "But before we get into the things you'll need to know as a Pokemon, we have to deal with these," she says as she brings up two orbs, one red and the other yellow. Kyuubi looked at them intently, while Naruto was confused. "What are those?" asked Naruto. "I don't know. These were attached to the seal that bound Kyuubi to you. I removed them as well and set them aside to be dealt with when your transformation was done. And now that it is, we can deal with whatever these things are," said Giratina. Honestly, it was enough that the young man turned into a Yveltal, not to mention having to free Kyuubi from her seal. But adding in that there were 2 additional souls inside of the seal as well. She had no idea that this human would be so complicated to deal with. "I believe I know what, or rather who they are," said Kyuubi as she examined the orbs. "What do you mean who? Are you telling me those are people? I actually had people sealed inside of me, along with you?" asked a shocked Naruto. Wasn't having the Kyuubi sealed inside of him enough? He had to have people somehow stuck in there as well. "Not exactly. You see, these are actually the souls of 2 people who are already dead. And as Giratina found them attached to the seal, I believe they were put in as security measures in case something happened to the seal. But as for whom they are, Kyuubi trailed off, not really sure how to tell Naruto who they were. "Well, who are they, Kyu?" asked Naruto, and Kyuubi gave him a solemn look. "Naruto, these orbs are the souls of your parents, Minato and Kushina," said Kyuubi. Naruto was stunned into silence at this. His dead parents had sealed their souls inside of his seal. To keep him safe, should the seal malfunction. While Naruto was mad at his father for his blatant stupidity at trusting the villagers to see him as a hero, he couldn't help but feel happy that even in death, they were trying to watch out for him the best they could. "Naruto, as I have removed their souls from the seal, I noticed that they have only a bit of energy to them, presumably only enough to do whatever it was they intended to do for you, and then disappear. But if you wish, I could supply them with energy from the Distortion realm so that you could talk with them. Not indefinitely, but it would still be a few hours at the most I can give. So, do you want to meet your parents?" asked Giratina. Normally she wouldn't really care one way or the other, but with Naruto being a Yveltal, she hoped that meeting his parents would get him to steer away from Yveltal's more destructive tendencies and allow him to have greater control of his powers than the original Yveltal did. For what seemed like hours, Naruto did not answer. So many thoughts ran through his head. Was he ready? What would he do when he got to meet them? What would they do when they find out how the village had treated him? More so now that he wasn't even human anymore. These thoughts and more raced through his head until he felt a slender hand holding his. Looking down, he saw that Kyuubi had taken his hand in hers and was giving him a supporting look. Looking back at Giratina, Naruto said in a firm voice, "Yes, I'm ready." Naruto was extremely nervous, despite what he said. Like any orphan child, he always wondered about his parents. Who they were. What they were like. Whether or not they had loved him. If they had simply abandoned him or not. And yet, despite wanting to know all these things and the chance to finally meet them and ask them personally, he wasn't sure that he wanted to. After all, he was afraid of what their answers would be. They had willingly sacrificed him to be Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, his father ignorant as to how the village would react to him. There was also the fact that he hated the village, which they died protecting along with him. Or how that he was no longer human, having willingly given up his humanity to become a legendary Pokemon. Would they hate him, that he hated the place they called home, that he was no longer human, that he was on friendly terms with the Kyuubi, who had attacked even though it was forced Konoha? Either way, he was soon to find out his answers, as much as he dreaded to know. The orbs that were the souls of his parents which were inside of his seal, were glowing their respective colors of red and yellow, before changing into the forms of his parents. Naruto felt his heart clench as he looked upon them. The male, his father, he reminded himself, stands fairly tall at 5'10", with fair skin and bright blue eyes and spiky blonde hair similar to Naruto. He also has jaw-length bangs framing either side of his face. His attire consists of a standard Konoha ninja uniform with 2 bands each on both of his sleeves, a flak jacket, forehead protector, and sandals. He also wears a short-sleeved long white haori over his attire, decorated by flames-like motifs on the edges, with the kanji for 4th Hokage written vertically down the back and closed on the front by a thin orange rope. Well, at least he knew where his former looks came from before his change. His mother was a rather beautiful woman. She has a slender but feminine build standing out about 5'4", fair skin, amethyst eyes, long bright red hair with strands that framed both sides of her face, and a black clip that parts her hair to the left. She is wearing a high-collared, sleeveless blouse under a long, loose-fitting dress. She also wore a dark blue band on her left wrist and pale purple standard shinobi sandals. Though upon their arrival, they both had confused looks on their faces. "Minato, where are we? I thought your seal was supposed to allow us to talk to our son when he needed us, but I don't see him or the Kyuubi," said Kushina. In fact, she didn't even think this was the seal. Hers certainly didn't look anything like this strange place. "I don't know, Kushina. In fact, I don't think we're even inside of the seal at all," said Minato, also confused. Just what was going on here? He had made the seal perfectly. His and Kushina's souls should have been awakened exactly when Naruto needed them. Indeed you are correct Minato Namikaze, you and your wife are not in the seal anymore. You are in fact in the Distortion realm, and I, Giratina, its ruler. Said Giratina, drawing their attention to her. But how are we here? And what is this Distortion realm? I've never heard of it before. Said Minato. Now he was really confused and worried. If he wasn't inside of his son's seal, then what had happened to him? And how did this strange woman factor into all this? But Kushina was not exactly worried about where they were or how they got there. I don't care about that. What I do care about is where my son is. My chakra was only supposed to appear before him in the seal when he was going to try and master Kyuubi's power. And since I'm not seeing a giant fox or a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes, which means you did something. So where the hell is my son damn it? Shouted Kushina, her hair floating behind her dangerously. At her proclamation, Naruto felt a twinge of joy. Well his father's reaction was not what he expected, more of an inquisitive kind, wanting to know where he was and what the Distortion realm was. But his mother's were touching. She did not care about the fact she was in another world, only about what had happened to her son and if he was okay, even though she was technically already dead. Do not worry Kushina Uzumaki, your son is safe and alive. But to answer your question Minato, the Distortion realm is a mirror dimension, the opposite to the world where you humans live. Said Giratina, shock on their faces. They were in another dimension altogether. Well, that would certainly explain why I've never heard of this place before. Thought Minato. But you still haven't told us how we got here or what happened to our son. So what exactly did you do to the seal to bring us out of it? He said. I did nothing that your son did not want done, as the changes done to him were of his own choosing, though during the process I had removed your souls of my own volition so that your presence would not interfere. Said Giratina. At this their eyes narrowed and they got into a battle stance, surprising the others. What the hell do you mean by changes? The hell did you do to my son? Asked an angry Kushina. She would not stand for this oddly dressed woman having done anything to her son. She didn't care if she was already dead, she would still fight this Giratina woman if she did anything. Giratina merely blinked in confusion. Ah, it seems as though I've misspoken. I forgot that you don't know what happened. Perhaps you would like to talk to your son directly? Naruto. Well where is he then? Said a frantic Kushina. Look behind you. Said Giratina, and so they did and saw Kyuubi and an uncomfortable looking Naruto. Both Kushina and Minato had strange looks on their faces as they looked at the new Naruto. Kyuubi, sensing the tension, gave Naruto's hand a reassuring squeeze before saying good luck, Naruto. Before stepping off to the side. When she said this, they were both broken from their trance and while Minato looked at Naruto with disbelieving eyes, Kushina's were unreadable. While Minato stood rooted in place, Kushina walked slowly forward. When she stopped in front of Naruto, she looked up into his eyes. She brought her hands up to his face and placed them on his cheeks. You know. She started. When my son was born, he had the same hair and eyes as his father, but he had my face. When I got to looked at him I thought this is my son and now that I look at you, despite how different how you look from me or Minato, I already know that you are my son, aren't you, Naruto? She said as she looked into Naruto's eyes, which were starting to tear up. She was soon engulfed in a hug by the taller Naruto and silently crying, silently whispering mom as he did so. Kushina smiled and hugged her son back. Neither of them saying anything. For both of them, it was something they had always wanted to do. Well Kushina would have wanted to be there for her son as he grew up, at least knowing that even after she was dead, he was alive and healthy was good enough for her. Well she wondered why he no longer had blonde hair like Minato, or his eyes were now a different shade of blue, amongst other changes to him, she was just glad to have her son in her arms again after so long. Naruto was of similar mind. Never had he imagined he would even learn who his parents were. But to actually meet them. To be held by his own mother and hug her back. It was so surreal. It was like a dream come true. He couldn't help but let his tears flow freely as years of pent-up emotion let itself out. But while this happened, Minato was at a loss for what to do. While he was happy to see his son and him get along with Kushina, he was worried as to how his son got to an alternate dimension or how such drastic changes to how he should have looked, given how he and Kushina looked, he could only guess that nothing good caused it. After all, one does not find themselves in a completely different dimension by accident. Even he couldn't do something like that with his Hiraishin. So how had his son managed to cross dimensions then? And who was that other red-headed woman who was standing next to him? There was so much he didn't know and didn't understand about what was going on. Though it seemed as though from what that Giratina woman had said, his son knew exactly what was going on and hoped that he could explain what was going on. He was broken from his thoughts when the woman who was standing next to his son was nudging him in the side. Hey you. Why aren't you over there with them? After all, that is your family. Said Kyuubi. But when Minato looked at them, he wasn't sure he wanted to interrupt their moment. After all, Kushina was much more attached to their son than he was, after all she did carry him for 10 whole months. And it felt like he would be intruding if he were to walk over there and join them, but more than that, he was nervous to meet his son. After all, he had forcibly subjected his son into becoming a Jinchuriki, and he was pretty sure his son wouldn't be happy about that. Would his son forgive him for forcing such a burden on him? Would he be angry at him for it? For a man who was hailed as a once-in-a-generation genius, he truly did not know what to expect from his estranged son. But another nudge from the strange red-headed woman, and the look in her eyes was telling him to get it over with. Looking at his wife and son, he couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. Here he was afraid of what his son thought of him, and yet he had stared down hundreds of ninja during the war and killed them. But he steeled his nerve and made his way over to them. When he was but a few feet away from them, he cleared his throat to get their attention, which he managed to do, as they stopped hugging each other and looked straight at him. "Oh, I'm sorry Minato. Here I was hugging him when you wanted to talk to Naruto as well, right? Well, go ahead," said Kushina, and she took a couple steps back. She had completely forgotten that Minato was there as well, as she was too busy enjoying the moment with her son. But now Minato was looking directly into Naruto's eyes, his tears of happiness having dried already. Neither one of them made a move for what felt like hours. Looking into his son's eyes, he realized they were parallel with his own, as he was the same height as he was, and he didn't even look fully grown yet, something he felt a little proud about it, as he realized that his son was going to be much taller than he would be. He laughed in his head at the image of his son being even taller than Jiraiya. Stupid perverted teacher bragging about how he was freakishly taller than him, one. But shaking his heads of those thoughts, he tried to figure out what to say exactly. "Naruto, I was as far as he got when Naruto decked him right in the face, sending him flying into a wall several meters away." The reactions were varied at this. Giratina only raised an eyebrow, Kyuubi was laughing, and Kushina looked mortified. She went to look at Naruto and ask why he did that until she saw his eyes. They were filled with anger, betrayal, pain, and loneliness. So much loneliness. Then she realized why. Minato's hope for the village to see Naruto as a hero failed, just as she knew and foolishly hoped that it would. When Minato was hit by that punch, he noticed a few things. First, his son was fast. The second that really hurt. Not as bad as when Jiraiya suckered him into peeping on the women's hot springs, and Tsunade was there and he was used as a distraction so Jiraiya could escape, leaving him alone to deal with an irate Tsunade. No, while not that strong, his son was still fairly stronger than most shinobi. Third, was that his son was obviously angry with him, like he thought he would be. Picking himself off of the ground, he was rubbing his sore jaw. "You said Naruto," catching their attention. "You stupid ignorant bastard. What kind of idiot are you? Honestly, what the hell made you think it was a good idea to make me Kyuubi's Jinchuriki? I understand that mom wasn't strong enough to hold her, but really, thinking that the village would see me as a hero after she was forced into attacking it." And when he said that, Minato looked right into his son's eyes and saw that same loneliness and pain Kushina did. He also came to the horrible realization that Kushina was right. The village did not respect his wish and see his son as a hero. It felt as though his heart was being crushed, that he realized that he had foolishly trusted the Leaf Village, his home that he loved so much, treated his son like a monster and an outcast. But he just so badly wanted to believe that Konoha was different, that it was above such petty hatred and ignorance, but he was wrong. And now it was clear to him that he was wrong and Konoha wasn't any different than any other village that hated Jinchuriki. And so, to the surprise of everyone there, prostrated himself before Naruto. "Naruto, there is nothing I can say to let you know how sorry I am. I was just so sure that the people of Konoha would be more open-minded and see you as a person, not a monster. But I guess that was just the foolish hope of a foolish man. I can't imagine how it was for you, being alone without either me or Kushina to raise you. The decision to make you a Jinchuriki was mine alone, and against your mother's protests, I did it anyway, so please don't be angry with her, this was entirely my fault," said Minato. Kushina could only look on in sadness. She knew that Minato was basically already in the belief that Naruto would not forgive him and sought to make sure that she could at least have a decent relationship with her son before their chakra ran out and they would truly be gone forever this time. It was rather bittersweet to know that she was right about how the village would react when she so badly wished she would not. She then saw that Naruto walked over to Minato and watched with anticipation. Naruto stopped right in front of his kneeling father. "You know, like any orphan I wanted to know who my parents were. What they looked like. What kind of people they were. And now I know. My mother is a beautiful and kind woman." Kushina smiled brightly at this. It was nice for a woman to know that she was beautiful, but coming from her son, who she had not seen since he was born, meant quite a bit more. But Naruto wasn't done yet. "But you Minato are an idealistic moron." And everyone's sweat dropped at this, and Kyuubi let out a few snickers at this. But I suppose you were just hoping for the best for me, given that you and mom couldn't be there for me. Well, not a bad thing, it's certainly idiotic to be that much of an idealist, and you should have been more of a realist like mom is. So all in all, I suppose you're not that bad of a person, just that you're too idealistic. And I guess that I could have had a worse father than you," said Naruto, and Minato finally looked up at him into his eyes. And while he saw anger for what his decision had done, he also saw acceptance. Acceptance of what had happened, of what he had done, and of him. And for Minato, even if his son was angry at him, it was enough to know that he was accepted by his son. "Wait, how exactly did this all happen, son?" asked a confused Kushina. Well, she was happy that Naruto didn't hate Minato, or at least completely, one thing still bothered her. How did Naruto get into this dimension, and how did he change so drastically? Naruto let out a sigh. Well, it went like this, and so Kushina and Minato were told of how Naruto came to become a legendary. From the scroll incident, which they scowled at the mention of Mizuki tricking him and trying to kill him. To Kyuubi calling on Giratina and arriving in the Distortion world and then becoming a legendary Pokemon. Though they were surprised that the red-haired woman before them was in fact Kyuubi in her human form, Naruto quickly talked them out of believing she was an enemy, as it was not her fault she attacked a leaf, not to mention that they would now get to spend a great deal more time with their son, as their chakra would not be spent fixing the seal or helping him master Kyuubi's chakra. But Kushina was still concerned about something. "So, since you're a legendary now, you're not human anymore, right? Does this mean that your DNA was changed as well? That I'm no longer your mother?" said a sad Kushina. After all, she only just got reunited with her son, and she didn't want to believe that she no longer shared any blood link with her own son. "No, Kushina, he is still your son. While Naruto is no longer human, he still has his original DNA. It's just that he is no longer human. It's difficult to explain, but his change into a legendary did not change his DNA exactly, just his species from human to Pokemon. So at most, only the parts of his DNA that make him human were changed to ones of a Pokemon, so the majority of his DNA will be the same, so he can still be considered your son," said Kyuubi. Kushina let out a relieved sigh at this. Even if some of Naruto's DNA was now different, the majority of it was still the same, meaning he was still her son. Well, he would have been her son even if he no longer shared any DNA with her, but still. "So, how much time do we have then? Since the seal is no more and Kyuubi is free, our chakra should last much longer and we will be able to spend more time with Naruto before we have to go," said Minato. Honestly, his chakra was only supposed to appear when the seal was damaged, fix it, and spend a bit of time with Naruto, and that was it. Now that it was no longer necessary to fix the seal, as it was gone, he didn't know how much time he and Kushina had with their son before their chakra ran out. Quite a long while actually. Given the amount of chakra you two had already put into the seal, you would have normally lasted about an hour or so. But I am feeding your form's energy directly from the Distortion realm, so you will be able to stay here for several more hours. 5 at the max for Minato, and about 7 or so for Kushina, as it seems her chakra is more potent than yours, Minato, allowing her more time," said Giratina. Minato, Kushina, and Naruto were happy to hear this. Though well, Minato was a little upset he wouldn't be able to spend as much time with Naruto as Kushina would, he was just glad he would be able to spend that much time with him. But then a thought came to Naruto. It was a long shot and might not work, but it was worth asking. "Giratina, do you think it would be possible to turn my parents into legendaries as well?" said a serious Naruto, shocking everyone in the room. Minato and Kushina could only look in shock at their son. Had they just heard right? That their son had suggested that they become legendaries? Like him? They were touched at the thought that their son wanted to give them a chance at life again, even if it wasn't as humans. But while they were happy that he wanted them to be together, the fact was, they were dead. Heck, the chakra in their pseudo-forms would only last, even with Giratina's help, only several hours. But still, they couldn't help but let hope grow inside, at the prospect of finally being with their son. Even if he was already a young man, that didn't mean there weren't things they could still teach him as his parents. For Kushina, well, there were many things she missed out on, but there were still plenty of things she would be able to do, like embarrassing him on front any girlfriend he has, depending on whether or not she even approves of a girl for her son. For Minato, there were so many things that as a father he wanted to teach him. How to be a good man, how to treat women right, just not the way Jiraiya does. Actually, there were a lot of things relating to his sensei's habits he didn't want passed on to Naruto now that he thought about it. But to Giratina, the question was not easy to answer. But she decided to answer as best she could. While it was possible to turn people into legendaries, I just wasn't sure if it would work on Minato and Kushina. It could possibly work on someone who was recently dead, but for two who had been dead for over a decade and little more than souls with only a few short hours left. I really have no idea. And she paused here for a moment. She wasn't sure if she really wanted to tell them the real reason why she especially doubted Minato being able to become a legendary. Especially in Minato's case. But seeing the looks she was getting, she decided she may as well tell them. Minato, well, I believe there is a chance that this may work for Kushina, I highly doubt it will work for you. The reason being has to do with why you don't have as much time as Kushina. Your chakra is disappearing, and fast. It was as if all of your chakra is quickly being drawn to somewhere else. This doesn't make any sense, as it isn't happening to Kushina as well. Said Giratina, her response getting a rather bittersweet response from the family. While saying Kushina had a chance was better than no, the news that it was unlikely to work with Minato was upsetting. I think I know why. Said Minato, drawing everyone's attention to himself. The seal I used, the Shiki Fuin, summoned the Shinigami to take the other half of Kyuubi in exchange for my soul. This could also be the reason why Kushina would have more time to spend with Naruto than I would, because the piece of myself I left in the seal is being drawn to the rest of it inside of the Shinigami's stomach, with the other half of Kyuubi. Then all we have to do is get your body. Said Naruto. I mean, if we can hurry up and grab yours and mom's bodies, which would increase the chances of the both of you being able to come back, right? And then we can pull out your soul from the Shiki whatever the hell seal, right? Asked Naruto. He finally got to meet his parents, and then turning into legendaries was the only way he was going to keep them around, and he was damn sure going to do everything he could to make it a reality. While Minato's sweat dropped at his son forgetting the name of the seal he had used, he was also thinking. After all, the seal he used essentially made him a Jinchuriki of the other half of Kyuubi. This linked his soul to hers, he had to mentally correct himself. Well, he had no idea what would become of the other Kyuubi, as whether or not she would be pulled out with the rest of his soul as well. If this all did work out, he just hoped that the other Kyuubi wouldn't be too angry once she was freed. That might work. With just their souls, it would be very difficult, but with their original bodies, no matter their condition so long as we have enough pieces of them, should be enough for them to become reborn as legendaries. Said Giratina, giving the family hope. She then snapped her fingers, and a new creature appeared. Standing at 4'11", two dark purple, bipedal Pokemon with a roundish body appeared. They have red eyes and a wide mouth. Multiple spikes cover their backs, and it has large pointed ears. Their arms and legs are short with 3 digits on both their hands and feet. They also have stubby tails. This is the fastest ghost-type Pokemon under my command, Jengar. While at times mischievous and even malicious Jengar is very loyal if treated right. Giratina explained to everyone else. She then turned to Jengar. Now Jengar. You see the blonde man and the red-haired woman? She said, making sure to point at Kushina so the Jengar would not get confused since Kyuubi also had red hair. Those two are dead. I need you to locate their bodies and bring them to me as fast as you can, alright? They will provide you with directions as to where their bodies are buried, but you are not to be seen by anyone for any reason, understood? The Jengars nodded energetically and went straight to Minato and Kushina to get the location of their bodies. They would have started talking, had a crystal appear, and 3 beams shoot from it right into the foreheads of Minato, Kushina and the Jengars. This special crystal was created by the psychic-type legendaries, and several were made and given to the legendaries, so they would be able to communicate with each other. Though with a little fiddling with it, Giratina was able to allow it to show the Jengars the exact locations of their bodies would be buried, via their memories. When the light died down, the Jengars then jumped through a portal to get the bodies of Minato and Kushina, as per its master's request. Now, all we have to do is wait and hope Jengar doesn't get caught. While it is a ghost Pokemon, making it virtually undetectable if it wanted to be, it has a penchant for mischief and causing trouble. If not for the fact that Jengar is the fastest ghost type I could summon, I would not have summoned him. Said an exasperated Giratina. But how were you able to summon him at all? I thought you said that no one could enter this world at all. Asked a confused Naruto. Because, I am the only ghost-type legendary in existence, and this affords me a great deal of control over all ghost-type Pokemon. She said, but got confused looks from everyone. Ghost-type? Asked Kushina. Then Giratina sighed in exasperation. That's right, they didn't know about the different types of Pokemon. In fact, it was a good idea to tell them about the different types now in case things did work out for Minato and Kushina and they did become legendaries. Alright, as it will take Jengar a while to find your bodies, I will explain the different types of Pokemon, as well as their strengths and weaknesses to each other. Said Giratina. And so one explanation later, they all knew of the different types of Pokemon and of Naruto being a dark and flying hybrid. So, with my dark and flying type, I would be weak to rock, electric, ice, and fairy, right? And since I'm part flying, my normal weakness to bug and fighting type moves are negated, then? Asked Naruto. Honestly, the fact that there were 18 different types of Pokemon threw him for a loop, but he managed to at least understand what his type was and his strengths and weaknesses. Giratina let out a small smile. Very good Naruto, you are correct. You also have immunity to ground and psychic type moves as well. I'm not sure how this will all apply to your jutsu though, so that's something you're going to have to find out on your own," said Giratina. She was happy that Naruto understood what his type was, and even more so that his flying type negated the weaknesses of his dark type. Well, at least he understood better than his mother, who looked like she had a headache. "But Minato, there is something you should know about when the process begins. As you do not have your entire soul, you may lose the battle for dominance with the soul of the legendary, as it is whole. This means that when it is done, you may not be the same as you once were. From something as simple as having different colored eyes and hair to being a female instead of male," said Giratina, getting shocked and worried expressions from the family. "Wait. How could I change into a female?" asked a startled Minato. He could understand his hair and eyes changing, as his sons certainly did, but his gender of all things. Yes. Well, many though us legendaries were genderless, we in fact all had genders. Well, I do not know what legendary you will turn into, but say the one you do turn into was originally female. Your soul and the soul of that legendary would fight for dominance, like how Naruto did. But like with Naruto, who did not completely gain dominance over his new form, as he has gained several characteristics of Yveltal, you could also lose this battle, and if the legendary is female, so too will your new form be. Wait. Does that mean if he goes through with it, he'll lose his memories? That he won't be himself if he goes through with this?" asked a teary-eyed Kushina. Honestly, while being able to come back to life and be with her son brought her joy, the thought of essentially losing her husband in such a way was horrible. Honestly, she didn't know what she would do if that when it was all over, Minato would forget everything they had been through together. But to her immense joy, Giratina shook her head. "No, Kushina. Minato will retain his memories after the change is done. Like with Naruto, any and all changes will be merely physical. The only mental changes that any of you would have at the most would be that you would gain knowledge of your abilities and new forms, nothing else," said Giratina. While the knowledge that Minato would not lose his memories put Kushina at ease, the fact that Minato could very well change drastically. But suddenly Giratina looked toward the large mirror where the Gengars had left and saw that they were waiting on the other side, with the bodies of Minato and Kushina. Opening the portal, Giratina motioned them to put the bodies down in the middle, only to see that their faces had been drawn on with a marker. Kushina's eye began to twitch at seeing this. "Is that marker on my face?" asked an angry Kushina. While she was happy the ghost creatures had gotten her and Minato's body, and they were in rather decent condition, considering they had been dead for 15 years, hers more so than Minato's because she was in Uzumaki. But seeing that their faces had been doodled on, when the current situation was far too serious for something so childish. She looked at the two Gengar with murderous eyes, and even though they were ghost types and she couldn't physically hurt them, they still backed away in fear. "I'm sorry about that. Gengar are notorious for their mischievous ways. Though when the change begins, the markings will be gone. But rest assured, I will deal with them later," said Giratina, causing the Gengar to gulp in fear and hold each other. "Now, which one of you wants to go first?" asked Giratina. Minato and Kushina looked at each other, though Minato gave Kushina a nod, letting her go first. Kushina stepped forward near her body. At this, Giratina had her tentacles came from her back and stabbed the ground around Kushina like with Naruto. To Naruto, it was essentially the same thing he had gone through, except his mother didn't have any of the tentacles stabbing into her like he did. Though it wasn't like she had anyone sealed inside of her. But now his mother was enveloped in a large light and Giratina pulled her limbs back. When the light died down, a large Pokemon that resembles a dragon and a bird could be seen. It is primarily pale silver white, but it has red undersides with slightly varying tones. It has a ridged mouth similar to a beak, although it has teeth on its lower jaw. Its head has a point to the back and its eyes have pointed dark red spikes on them. It has a long, slender neck and a smooth, streamlined body, with the exception of dark red plate-like protrusions that run down the length of its back and two smaller ones on the ends of their tails. It has large wings that resemble hands. "Whoa, this feels strange. But what exactly am I?" said Kushina as she looked over her new form. "You are a Lugia, a guardian of the sea, though it's strange, Lugia is supposed to be blue, not red," said Giratina. How was this possibly? When Naruto went through the change, he inherited many characteristics from Yveltal, though thinking on it now how mother had red hair, meaning his hair color changed because the red hair was in his genes and it became dominant during his change. "Guardian of the sea, eh? I guess that fits, considering you came from the land of whirlpools, eh?" said Minato. "Yeah. Not to mention that Giratina said this Luigi or whatever is supposed to be blue, but it's red instead. That's awesome," said an excited Kushina with a fist pump. Which considering she was now a dragon dinosaur bird it was rather strange to look at. When Kushina returned to human form, there were several noticeable differences to her appearance. She was noticeably taller, now standing just shy of 5'8", having red marking around her eyes like her legendary form. Her eyes looked as though you were looking at the sea itself, and her form was noticeably more attractive in general. Wide hips, flawless skin, a slightly larger bust, which made both Naruto and Minato blush. "So, how do I look?" asked Kushina, and she had a Cheshire grin when they could only nod dumbly. Taking that as a good sign, she looked herself over in one of the many crystals in the distortion world and thought, wow. I look incredible. Now it's your turn, Minato. Though remember, things may not turn out the way you want them to, warned Giratina. Minato looked toward his wife and son, and the both of them enveloped him in a group hug. "Well, here's hoping things work out alright," said Kushina. While she was mad at him for his stupid choice regarding Naruto, Minato wasn't a bad person, just making bad decisions because he put too much trust into the good of people. "Yeah, though it would be pretty cool if you got red hair like me and mom though," said Naruto, and all of them chuckled. "Well, it's time," said Minato, and they ended their family hug. He walked over to his own dead body, and Giratina did the same thing she had done with Kushina and Naruto. He was engulfed in a bright golden light, and they waited with anticipation and slight fear at what would happen. What appeared was an avian Pokemon resembling a phoenix and a peacock. Its feathers are predominantly gold and red, with yellow tail feathers, a wide underside, and green feathers at the tip of its wings. It has a green stripe on its neck, a yellow beak, black rings around its red eyes, and a feathered yellow crest on its head. It has darkly colored feet and legs with 4 toes and long talons. "So it's Ho-Oh then, the counterpart to Lugia," said Giratina. "Minato, is that you?" asked Kushina. With how little of Minato's soul was left, no one was sure if this would even succeed in the first place. Though she still wasn't sure if it did. With her becoming Lugia, Giratina said that the legendary she became had blue instead of her red, which meant that the colors of Lugia changed to fit her style. But that wasn't the case here. Ho-Oh did not respond and instead was engulfed in bright flames, which quickly shrunk down to human size. Though they were not prepared for what, or rather who appeared from the flames. It was not the blonde-haired man they were expecting, but instead a rather beautiful red and orange-haired woman. Heck, she could have passed as a relative of Kushina's. She wore a red kimono dress with flower-like designs throughout the very edges of it. There is a silvery white cloth wrapping around the kimono with wave-like patterns, along with green frills being on the edges of the cloth. Feathers being attached from the back to symbolize the bird-like form the wearer would take to help show its beauty and elegance. She had lovely red and orange hair and dazzling blue eyes. She looked at everyone and did a short bow. "Hello everyone," she simply said with a smile. Kushina's only response to her former husband having been turned into her wife made her eyes roll into the back of her head and fall to the ground unconscious. Why Kushina and Minato's dead bodies had marker all over their faces. The two Gengars had just exited the portal to the human world. A realm that no Pokemon, save for maybe the ever-curious Mew, had been to in centuries. While they understood the mission given to them by their mistress was important, there was also the inherent nature of a Gengar to consider as well, which was to cause mischief. And so, along the way of getting the body of the person they were sent to get, along the way they had their fun. They tailed a few people along the way, managing to spook them. They sent several dogs who into frenzy, causing their animal-looking owners to try and calm them down. Heck, they even managed to pant several of those strange people with the pure white eyes. But when they got to their destination and found the bodies, they just couldn't resist but take a page from the infamous Jigglypuff of long ago and draw all over their faces. Sure, they would probably get into trouble, but they were already dead and when they were reborn, it would disappear anyway. So no harm no foul, right? After Kushina had passed out, the person who used to be Minato rushed to her side and caught her. Everyone else rushed to her side except Giratina, who kept off to the side and let them be. After making sure she was just okay, Naruto looked at the human form of Ho-Oh. This is kind of awkward to ask, but who are you? Are you still Minato, or are you someone else now? Asked Naruto. While he knew there was a chance for his father to go through some drastic changes, he didn't think it would be anything like this. The woman in elegant clothing tapped her chin and thought. I'm not sure. I still possess the memories of Minato, but there are several holes. Though I think that was due to the fact that there wasn't much of Minato's soul that went through the process to begin with. Now that I think of it, most of Minato's soul was actually sealed elsewhere, that Shiki Fuin, correct? She asked, getting a nod from Kyuubi, as she knew all too well that the jutsu required the user's own soul as payment and was actually surprised Minato managed to siphon enough of his own soul into Naruto's seal to repair it if needed. Then that means Minato still exists, along with your other self inside the stomach of that creature. She said. Really? Said Kushina, who had just woken up from fainting. The idea that Minato still existed sounded good. After all, she needed to give him a good ass whopping for his stupid choice in making Naruto Kyuubi's Jinchuriki like he did. As well as anyone else in the Leaf Village who dared treat her son bad. Yes. Though the problem is actually getting him free of the Shiki Fuin, along with the half of Kyuubi he sealed inside of himself. She said. But what about you though? I mean, would the rest of his soul be absorbed into you? And what do we even call you, as you're not even a male now? Asked Kyuubi. She only asked because she hoped that Minato's soul would in fact be absorbed into her, as the only alternative was that he could once again be reincarnated into a Pokemon, only this time it would work like it did with Kushina and Naruto. But to her dismay, she shook her head no. No. The part of Minato that went into the seal, that is now a piece of me can no longer be joined together in any way, as I am now a separate being from him altogether. As for what to call me, how about Akurai? She said. Sunny and bright? Asked Naruto, and she nodded. That would make sense, as Ho-Oh is the rainbow bird and a flying and fire type as well. Said Giratina, putting her 2 cents in. The now named Akurai clapped her hands and had a smile on her face. Then it settled then, my name is Akurai. While Naruto smiled at her, it quickly turned into a frown. I just remembered, we're forgetting one thing. Even though the rest of Dad's soul is sealed away in the Shiki Fuin, how do we release him? Unless Mom knows how to summon the thing that took his soul and try to get Dad's soul along with Kyuubi's other half. He said, looking at his mother who shook her head no. Scrunching her eyes in thought, something in the back of her mind was calling to her, like a forgotten memory. I know the thing he summoned is familiar to me somehow, but how? The jutsu itself was a forbidden one and a scroll from her eyes widened in shock. The mask shrine. Kushina suddenly yelled. What are you going on about? Asked Kyuubi. The jutsu Minato used was a technique discovered by a member of my clan and given as a goodwill present to Hashirama when he married Mito. But Konoha also has a shrine of masks from my clan and one of them is linked directly to the being summoned. While wearing it, one can summon it and control it directly and forcibly make it release souls that it devoured. She then grew a grim look on her face. The only problem is that it follows the actions of the wearer and you must slice open its stomach to get the souls out, meaning your own stomach will be sliced open as well. Finished Kushina. Everyone had a grim look on their face when hearing this. At first they thought it was all good news when Kushina told them of a way to summon the creature to get Minato's soul back, right up until she said exactly how you were supposed to get the soul back from it and everyone rubbed their stomachs at the thought of slicing it open to get the soul back. Is there any way we can barter with the creature then? I mean, if it is able to be summoned, it has to have at least some intelligence, so we might be able to work out a deal with it. Asked Akurai. Even from what few memories of Minato she did have, Minato knew very little of the creature summoned by the Shiki Fuin. Not knowing if the thing even understood human speech, let alone if it could be reasoned with for it to relinquish the soul of Minato and the other half of Kyuubi was quite the gamble. Okay, but where is the shrine exactly? I mean, the Jengar are going to need to know where it is so they can get it, or would that be a bad idea since they're ghosts and this mask is connected to a soul-eating summon? Wondered Naruto, and everyone blinked at that. He had a point. The creature devoured souls as payment for being summoned and ghost-type Pokemon were basically souls themselves, so either they would be fine or they would be devoured by the creature. You have a point. Sending out Jengar or any ghost-type Pokemon for that matter would be too risky in this case. But even as a dragon-type legendary as well as a ghost, there are no dragon Pokemon I could bring forth that would be able to get the mask unseen. Giratina said with irritation. Honestly, she had no idea that answering Kyuubi's distress call would lead to such a headache. While she was glad that it resulted in not just one legendary being brought back, but 3, with the possibility of yet another if they were able to reclaim the soul of Minato, then it would all be well worth the headache. Is there no Pokemon you can call on? I mean, sure you're a ghost and dragon type, but as a legendary, shouldn't you have some leeway over all lesser Pokemon? Especially since you're an important legendary? Asked Kyuubi. Giratina let out a sigh. Well, you are correct that I am one of the most important legendary Pokemon, the only one above me in the hierarchy being Arceus, but you have to understand that due to my position, many Pokemon are weary of associating with me. Well, ghost types have no problem, as I am the only ghost legendary there is, even dragon type Pokemon sometimes hesitate to associate with me. And while there are a few Pokemon I can think of that would be able to get the job done, they are of a different types than I am, making it very difficult to get them to listen to me at all. Said Giratina. Honestly, if Darkrai were still alive, then Naruto would have been able to command it, as not only is Darkrai lower in the chain of command of legendaries, it is also a dark type, same as Naruto, and these two factors would have allowed Naruto to have a greater chance of getting Naruto to command it. 1. Everyone looked downtrodden at this, but then Kyuubi snapped her fingers. What if Naruto, Kushina, or Akurai asks it to do it? Everyone looks at her in confusion. I mean they're legendaries too now. So shouldn't they be able to call upon a Pokemon to do this for them? Well, maybe not Naruto, given that the aura he exudes in his Pokemon form would be frightening to lesser Pokemon, but Kushina or Akurai should be able to get them to do it for us. Everyone turned to Giratina for confirmation. Well, yes Naruto, Kushina and Akurai would be able to command Pokemon, it would only work if they're the same type. But of the three of you, only Naruto and Kushina would be able to summon a Pokemon that would be of any use. This made Akurai puff her cheeks out in indignation, making her look cute, Naruto thought for a moment. But even then, you would have to call the right one on your own. Though it is my personal opinion that Naruto be the one to do this, as psychic-type Pokemon that you could summon Kushina is weak to ghost types, and there are few fire-type Pokemon that Akurai could summon that would be of use. Said Giratina, getting Akurai and Kushina to pout and Naruto to give them apologetic looks. But how do I even summon a Pokemon to begin with? Questioned Naruto. You must first be able to differentiate the new Pokemon energies in your body, the flying and dark energies. When you do, you must grasp the dark-type nature of your being and use it to call out, so to speak, to a Pokemon of the same type. With practice, you will be able to call upon exactly which Pokemon you desire, but for now you will only be able to randomly summon one and hope for the best. Said Giratina, with all of them giving her a deadpan expression. Really, they were just supposed to reach inside of themselves, try and grasp their new Pokemon energies, and just hope for the best. Well, it was worth giving it a shot, so Naruto sat down and meditated in the hopes he could. Concentrating, he searched inside of himself like he would when trying to call upon his chakra when he was younger and starting the academy. He could feel something, but he couldn't quite reach it. It was like when you lost something and you knew it was in the room you're looking in but couldn't find it. Then it hit him. While trying to call upon it like it was his chakra was somewhat successful, that was also the problem. It wasn't human chakra or whatever the Pokemon equivalent of it was called. It was Pokemon energy and therefore inherently different than what he was used to learning how to use in the academy. This meant he had to do things differently. He had to try and remember how it felt when he first became a legendary, when he first changed into Yveltal. How it felt with the energy flowing through him. How light and free he felt, yet at the same time how strangely malicious it felt. Wait, that wasn't how chakra felt like when he was a human. This meant that he had found it. Letting out a smile in victory, he stood back up again. Raising his left arm, he concentrated on the part of his energy that felt malicious and soon dark-type energy to pool into his hand and it was soon engulfed in a dark aura. The dark aura soon grew until it looked like a swirling mass of darkness had devoured his hand. Very good. Now, you need to call out to a Pokemon. And when you get better at controlling your power, you will be able to do all this instantly. Said Giratina. Nodding to Giratina, Naruto brought his concentration back onto using his energy to summon a Pokemon. The dark energy around his arm shot off and hit the stone wall near them, but it did not destroy it, but instead turned into a large dark void and grew in size until it was about 5 feet in diameter. Then, without warning, something jumped out of it and the void closed. The large brown bipedal Pokemon appeared. It has a long, shaggy, white mane that covers most of its face. It has long ears, a long pointed nose, and a large mouth with teeth that are usually gritted. Its eyes are opaque yellow with black sclera and pupils. It has 3 broad leaves with brown spokes on its hands. Its feet resemble a Tengu Jetta. It looks around confused before its eyes settle on Naruto and it suddenly takes a kneeling position in front of him, surprising him. Okay, what did I summon and why is it doing that? Asked Naruto as he looked at the new Pokemon in front of him. That is a Shiftry, a grass and dark type Pokemon. This is surprising, as I did not expect you to summon a decent Pokemon on your first attempt, not to mention it will be useful in getting the mask. Said Giratina. But why is it kneeling to him like that? I mean, sure Naruto is a dark type same as it is, but he is flying type and it's a grass, so shouldn't, I don't know, hate him because of that? Asked Kyuubi. Let it be known that while she knew of the legendary Pokemon, she did not know of their types and all the things relating to it, so this was new to her as well. Normally, in this case a Shiftry would be neutral to Naruto because of his type. But all Pokemon have a special ability, and the one Naruto has is called Dark Aura, which increases the power of his dark-type moves. In this case, it also increases his ability to connect with dark-type Pokemon, giving him greater leverage in controlling them. Explained Giratina, making Naruto's eyes widen. So if he remembered from Giratina's earlier explanation about types, not only did he gain a boost for using dark-type moves because he was also a dark type, but his ability as Yveltal made his dark-type moves stronger still. That was awesome. But he could test out his Dark Aura ability, as well as his Pokemon skill in general later, first he had a job for this Shiftry. Shiftry? Naruto said, and the Pokemon raised its head to look at him. I have a mission for you. There is a special mask in a shrine in the human world that I need you to get. It is imperative that you are not seen or heard by the humans, so stealth is a mush. My mother will give you the location and then you will be off. Understood. Naruto said in an authoritative tone. The Shiftry nodded and went through the same process as the Jengers did and was shown the memories of where it was and then left through a portal Giratina opened. After it left, Kushina was rubbing her temples. You alright mom? Asked a worried Naruto. Kushina had been through that twice in a rather short period of time, so he was worried it might have some kind of side effect. Kushina gave him a smile, happy he cared about her well-being, despite the fact they barely knew each other yet, which was something she was going to have to rectify. Don't worry Naruto, I'm fine. Just a slight headache from that memory transfer. I'll be fine. So then. She said, turning her attention to Giratina. What kind of ability do I have then? Since my son has that dark aura of his, I would assume I have my own unique ability as well. Giratina nodded. You are right. Normally, most legendaries would have the ability called pressure, where their opponent would use up more energy when fighting. But as you are a different color than a Lugia would normally be, you might have a different ability as well. I believe it was called multiscale, where you were able to slightly reduce the damage taken from an attack. As do you Akurai. You have the ability Regenerator, which allows you to obviously regain health over time. She said, getting smiles from Kushina and Akurai. Eventually, Giratina decided to teach them more about the Pokemon they now were, what they could do, and just about anything related to their new station. Then after that, Naruto was able to talk to his mother and Akurai. While the latter only had a portion of the memories of his father, she did retain all the memories of Ho-Oh. So not only did he get to find out more about his mother, which as an orphan he always wondered about them, he also got to learn more about what the world was like when Pokemon still roamed the world. While the information given by Giratina was very helpful, she didn't really know much of the world before it changed, mostly due to the fact she stayed in the Distortion world unless something required her to leave, which was almost never. Though their talk was interrupted by the image of Shiftry appearing on the other side of the portal, holding the mask. Giratina opened up the portal and allowed the Shiftry to enter. The Shiftry then kneeled before Naruto and presented the mask to him. Everyone in the room could feel a deathly aura surrounding the mask and knew Shiftry had gotten the correct one. Taking the mask, Naruto said thank you for your assistance Shiftry. Now, how do I de-summon you? He wondered aloud. As he did so, the Shiftry was engulfed in a dark aura and then disappeared. As you have just witnessed, when you no longer require the assistance of a summoned Pokemon, you can simply will them away. But now, let's move on to more important matters said Giratina, and everyone nodded. Kushina then took the mask from Naruto and walked a few feet away from everyone else. Kushina placed the mask down and slowly went through hand signs as she drudged up the old memories of the seals required to summon it as she didn't want to actually put on the mask herself. She eventually finished the seals required to summon it and the mask glowed a sickly purple. Then, right before them, the ghoulish form of the creature that Minato had summoned to seal away half of Kyuubi into himself appeared. Now, I believe we have some talking to do said Kushina to the specter. X. Naruto let out a sigh as he looked at the unconscious form of his mother resting, the shock of what had happened being too much for her. What had happened to cause her to faint you may ask. Well, it all started when they had summoned the Shinigami Minato had summoned to seal Kyuubi. Only when it saw Giratina, it immediately attacked her. After a short battle, and Kushina using her chains to bind it, did they get a clear answer out of it as to why it attacked her. Only to be shocked and disturbed by the answer. Apparently, the Shinigami was actually the amalgamation of the Pokemon that haven't been able to get to the portal to their new home and had been caught by the various teams and used for experimentation. But at some point during their torturous tests, something happened. Some kind of explosion that had forced all of the Pokemon there to forcibly fuse together into what was now before them, with the ghost type being dominant, which would explain why it had looked like it did and why Naruto's dark move Sucker Punch was super effective against it. Needless to say, they were appalled by what had been done to the poor Pokemon. Giratina was the worst off however, as a legendary and the only existing ghost-type legendary, it was her duty to take care of them. And so she did. Sending a message to Arceus about what had happened, she then essentially split apart the poor creature so that all of the numerous Pokemon and human souls it had devoured were now free of their torment. And to Giratina's surprise, Arceus sent its thanks to her for finding those lost souls and setting them free so that they could be purified and be able to pass on. But with that taken care of, Giratina then brought out Minato's soul for reincarnation like before, except this time it went without a hitch mostly. It seems that with the missing piece of his soul that is now part of Akurai, he took on a few more characteristics of the legendary he became, the dragon and lightning type Zekrom. Instead of blonde hair, Minato now had pitch black hair with some of his former blonde hair as some zigzag stripes and his former blue eyes were now red. But the biggest change of all was that he had no memories of Kushina. At first, they didn't understand how this could have happened until Giratina figured it out. She explained that the soul fragment Minato put inside of the seal, that was now part of Akurai, had all the memories and feeling that Minato had concerning Kushina. Meaning that now they were permanently separated from him and there was no way he would ever be the same man that had loved Kushina. While it was true that Akui now held all of these memories, the fact was that the man she fell in love with didn't even remember her and the one that had those memories was a woman who at best could be considered Minato's twin sister. With all of that revealed, Kushina couldn't handle the strain and promptly fainted. But on lighter tone, the other Kyuubi that had been sealed inside of Minato had also been released and had taken a form similar to that of the Kyuubi that Naruto had inside of him. Whereas the one sealed inside of Naruto had red hair, this one had a dark blue. She also had a darker skin tone, the kind one would expect of a resident of the land of lightning. Her eyes were also a bright yellow, as was the large bead in her hair. When she had taken her human form, she had arched her back and stretched, causing her chest to be pushed outward, getting a blush from Naruto as he couldn't help but stare at her generous bust. He couldn't help it. He was still a teenager after all, and his new animal instincts were not helping in this situation. Things only got worse for him when he turned his head and saw the red-haired Kyuubi smirking at him. "Naruto, if you wanted to stare at a pair of breasts, I wouldn't mind. Though given she is me, I don't think she would really care either." "Right," said the red-haired Kyuubi. The blue-haired one stopped stretching and placed her hands behind her head. "Well, I have to admit he is rather handsome and not a bad catch from what limited memories I was able to get from you despite us being separated," she said as she gave Naruto a predatory smirk and a wink, making him turn even redder. Naruto however was saved from further embarrassment when Giratina coughed into her hand, getting their attention. "Now that everything has been settled, I believe it's time we got down to business. As the four of you are now new legendaries, you will have to be properly trained in the use of your abilities and know of your station as the specific legendary you are. This will take quite some time, especially since you will have to meet the other legendaries to familiarize with them. Any questions? Will we be going back to the elemental nations?" asked Naruto. "I'm afraid I cannot allow that. While humans are not nearly as advanced technologically as they once were, their abilities with this Jutsu is also a big problem. If it is able to seal away someone as powerful as Kyuubi here, then no doubt it will be able to bind us legendaries. I will not allow my brethren to be used in a manner similar to the Biju. No offense." "None taken," replied the two Kyuubi. "But if we're leaving, what about the other Jinchuriki? What if we find some people who deserve a second chance?" pleaded Naruto. At this, Giratina blinked. "The other Jinchuriki? Is that what you were called when Kyuubi was sealed inside of you?" And to be honest, she was so out of touch with the human world that she didn't even know the Kyuubi had been sealed in the first place, let alone all of the Biju had been sealed away. "Yes, the rest of the Jinchuriki and the other Biju. All of us have been sealed," said the red-haired Kyuubi. "I see. If that is the case, then something must be done about that. Humanity have caused enough damage when the Pokemon roamed the land, but actually sealing beings as powerful as the Biju into humans is even worse. I will speak with Lord Arceus and see what can be done about this situation. But in the meantime, you four must be trained in your new roles and abilities. Especially if you are allowed to go back to the human world to search out the other Jinchuriki." When she said that, they all nodded in confirmation. "So, what do we do now? I mean, it's going to take a great deal of time to get used to our new abilities and powers, and considering the masked man who forced Kyuubi to attack the leaf, who knows what he's up to. Not to mention he could very well be targeting the other Jinchuriki as we speak," said Akui. "Do not worry. Time in the distortion realm flows as fast or as slowly as I wish it to, with limits. So you all will have plenty of time to get trained properly, though considering your different types, I'm going to need some help in training you all properly. Thankfully, there are plenty of other legendaries still alive to help with that," Giratina said. But that said, they all knew that for however long they were going to be in the distortion realm, they would have to make the time count. Not only would they have to keep the other Jinchuriki safe from the machinations of the masked man who attacked Konoha all those years ago, but they would also have to deal with the other hidden villages, who would no doubt cause quite an uproar over having their property stolen. But their eventual reunion in Konoha would be bittersweet for Minato and Kushina, as while Minato had permanently lost his memories of Kushina, he still had the ones concerning his life in Konoha, which meant that when they got back there, they wouldn't be able to stay very long and would have to say goodbye to their old friends forever, as they knew that as Pokemon, they wouldn't be able to stay in the elemental nations. Kushina especially couldn't wait to see her old friend Makoto. And not to mention this would give Kushina time to deal with the fact the man she once loved was now a woman. Though Akurai seemed rather enthusiastic about it. Konoha, 1 month later. Things had been very hectic after Naruto had disappeared. Sarutobi had declared martial law within the village, as not only had Naruto been kidnapped by some strange creature, but Mizuki was also a traitor who, it turns out, had been working for Konoha's biggest traitor, Orochimaru. When Sarutobi had learned this, he was especially furious that Orochimaru had managed to turn one of his ninja into a traitor. And so he had his ninja weed out any more traitors of the snake, as well as any possible information on what happened to Naruto. But unfortunately, there was nothing that could be found on that end. Well, not entirely. Since no information could be found on what that tentacle was, Sarutobi summoned the Monkey King Enma and asked him if he knew anything about it. But the only thing he was able to get out of Enma was a myth about some kind of strange summon world that housed creatures entirely unlike any other and rivaled the Biju in power. The only other thing Enma knew was something about some kind of creature known as the Keeper of the Mirror World, the Distortion. The myth stated that some kind of otherworldly creature lived in a world parallel to their own, and they believed that it was similar to a summoned creature's land. But there was a problem. There was no way for Enma or any other summoning creature to even get to this supposed land and contact them like summons sometimes did. And so, that small glimmer of hope that Sarutobi thought he had found turned out to be another dead end. With each failure, he felt his heart become heavier as he slowly began losing hope of ever finding Naruto again. He had promised himself to look after the boy as best he could, and while he knew that he hadn't done the best job, Naruto's life hadn't been too bad. But before he could get lost in his thoughts of failure, an Anbu had appeared in his office. "What is it?" asked Sarutobi tiredly. "Sir. The lake where Naruto Uzumaki had disappeared is glowing strangely," said the Anbu, and Sarutobi immediately stood up. "Anbu?" he said, and immediately the Anbu that were hidden in the room appeared. "I want every available ninja at that lake on the double. I will not tolerate any excuses. It seems as though the thing that kidnapped Naruto is making a return. And I want to be there to properly greet it." With that, the Anbu left to go inform their comrades, and Sarutobi left for the clearing where he watched helplessly as Naruto was taken, not knowing he was going to be in for the reunion of a lifetime. At the clearing. As the Anbu had said, the small lake was indeed glowing, like when you take a prism and shine a light through it. Already several ninja were there, and surprisingly enough Kakashi was there before anyone else had been. "Kakashi, since you were the first one here, maybe you can tell me what's going on?" asked Sarutobi. "Sir. Not too long ago, the lake began glowing, as you can clearly see. Immediately, I had one of the Anbu patrolling this area go inform you of this. While waiting, I made a shadow clone to see what was on the other side, since Naruto had been dragged through," said Kakashi. "And?" pressed Sarutobi. Letting out a sigh, Kakashi continued. "What I saw was something unlike anything I had ever seen before. The whole world was a mess. There were floating structures, as if gravity itself was out of whack. Even the water was flowing upside down in some parts. My shadow clone would have looked further until something dispelled it. And from what I could gather, it was similar to what had kidnapped Naruto a month ago," said an angry Kakashi. He blamed himself just as much as Sarutobi did, if not more so. After all, Minato was his teacher and the closest thing to family he had after his father died. But he hadn't been able to do much for Naruto over the years and had been on a mission when he had been spirited away. But now that the gateway to whatever strange world that Naruto had been taken to was open and the very creature on the other side, Kakashi was willing to do whatever it took to get Naruto back. "Hey, something's happening," shouted one of the ninja, and indeed something was happening. The light coming from the lake was intensifying and they all readied their weapons for whatever was going to come through. However, they were not prepared for a distinctly male voice to echo through the portal. "Man, it's so nice to finally be back. It's been such a long time," said the voice. "Well, it has been a few years." "Well, sort of," said a female voice. "It will be nice to see those old faces again. I wonder how much they've changed since last we saw them," said a different female voice. "Well, looks like we've already got a welcoming committee," said another male voice as the owners of said voices finally stepped out of the portal. The first person was an incredibly tall man, standing nearly as tall as Jiraiya at 6'3". He has scarlet locks, with black streaks in his hair that looked like small horns. His eyes however were a very familiar shade of blue however. He is wearing a red full-length coat with black branch-like lines, like the ones on Yveltal's body. It has a hood with grey fur trim and waist-high slit going up the back. It has a large silver zipper that fastens at the top and zips down to seal the coat. It has gold drawstrings for the hood decorated with a large ruby red bead hanging from the end and a silver chain ornament adorned with 4 large obsidian claws that fasten to a loop on either side of the collarbone region. The coat was open, revealing his well-muscled form. He had on a red shirt with black lines going from his arms that met in the chest area and going down the middle, making the shape of a Y. He had on black pants and his clawed boots. There were two women on either side of him and the one on his right was 5'6" in height. She had red hair, but it was a bit wild and had black tips. There was also a rather sizable turquoise-like gem near the bottom of her hair, which reached past her knees. Though she was wearing a rather provocative skin-tight grey shirt that showed off her generous bust, being around a large C to low D she also had light grey pants, but wasn't wearing any shoes. She has red markings around her eye, which were turquoise. Her skin, while having a small tan to it, was flawless. The woman on the other side of him looked identical to the other, except she had golden eyes, her hair was blue, the gem in her hair was yellow like her eyes, and she had the skin tone like someone from Kumo. The next woman shocked many, as she greatly reminded them of Kushina. She wore a red kimono dress with flower-like designs throughout the very edges of it. There is a silvery white cloth wrapping around the kimono with wave-like patterns, along with green frills being on the edges of the cloth. Feathers being attached from the back to symbolize the bird-like form the wearer would take to help show its beauty and elegance. She had lovely red and orange hair and dazzling blue eyes. But what really got them was the woman standing right next to her, who looked exactly like Kushina did. The only difference was that she had some kind of strange red marking near her eyes. She was also wearing a dress similar to what Kushina was seen wearing, except it was silver in color with red accents. And the last person to step through the portal nearly gave them all heart attacks, as the man looked just like Minato, just with different hair and eye colors, and the coat which used to be white with red flames on the edge was now black with yellow lightning bolts. "Wow, this is quite the welcoming committee you got for us, old man," said the red and black-haired man, and Sarutobi let out a small gasp in shock. There was only one person in all of Konoha besides his son Asuma and grandson Konohamaru who would dare call him that. But Sarutobi could plainly see that this man was not him, the only thing he had in common in him was his blue eyes that shone with the same mischief as Naruto's did. "No, it's not possible. You can't possibly be him," said Sarutobi. "Oh really? How is it that I can't be me, old man? Though I suppose I can't blame you, given my new appearance. Very well, to prove I am in fact Naruto Uzumaki, son of Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze, how about I tell everyone here how I really managed to knock you out and steal the forbidden scroll? I'm sure everyone would love to hear how that happened," said Naruto, shocking those who knew the truth of his parentage at so blatantly saying it, but more so Sarutobi, because only two people knew how Naruto really stole the scroll, him and Naruto, as he had told no one else how it happened. "No. I mean, no, that's quite alright. But if you truly are Naruto, then who are they? How do you know about your parents, and for that matter, why do those two look just like them?" questioned Sarutobi. Well, he had trouble believing that the now adult male in front of him was truly Naruto. A part of him wanted to believe that the two lookalikes were also Minato and Kushina, even though the rational part of him was trying to deny it. Then there was the mystery of who the last three women were. After all, Naruto had been gone for nearly a month and having gone through some drastic changes and reappearing through a similar manner as when he had been taken with 5 other people and 2 of them looking like his parents. Well, old man, that's the thing. There's quite a bit we have to talk about. Not only about the people standing beside me, but also about the fact that you've been lying to me for years," said Naruto with a serious look. Sarutobi flinched at that and could only let out a tired and relieved sigh. He knew he wasn't going to enjoy the conversation he was about to have, but he was just glad that Naruto was safe and unharmed. What if Naruto was sealed in Pokemon End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.